You have a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So this is our, this is our December, no, God, give me my break. I've got the wrong page open. This is the February 22nd Board of Public Works regular meeting. Present, we have Earl Webb, Richard Nichols, Tom Owens. We have Robin, Austin, Sharon, and Tim Richard is sitting in for the mayor. On the Zoom, we have Presley and Mike, our solicitor. And I think that's everyone's agenda in attendance. So we have to return to open session. I think we voted to come out of executive, sorry. Okay, so the consent agenda.
Do you want to do pledge of allegiance?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, since we didn't do that upstairs. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
and the silence. Thank you. Okay, so now we're moving on to the consent agenda. Does anyone want anything pulled from it, or do I have a motion?
Motion to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So it's 5-0. All right. Moving on, receive the Inframark report.
Good evening. Okay, so first thing, oxidation ditch. I think we have a plan. BPW, Austin's been working with a contractor and we were working on procedures. We have open, close the valves, exercise the valves, all the valves that we need to operate are currently working. We would like to do a trial run to empty that basin. We'll schedule that and have the county shut off flow for a scheduled afternoon and take care of that in the near future. The proposal for pump and valve replacement for PS3 was accepted. The PO was issued to Hills. I sent an email asking for an update on lead times now that all the equipment's been ordered. So that's pending. I'll forward that to Austin as soon as I get it. We solicited 3 proposals to replace the wet well piping in pump station 2. The piping's pretty much, you can almost poke your finger through it. We had gotten a quote from Sprigg back when Richard was here, but we got significantly lower quotes from Breakwater and Caswell. Caswell came in low at $18,550. So Austin has approved that proposal, and BPW issued a PO to Harry Caswell. We don't have a project scheduled yet. We just accepted it this week, I believe. We also solicited prices from those 3 contractors to replace the hatch at pump station 6 on Connecticut Avenue. It's Connecticut Avenue. Yes. It's a hatch, the wet wells in the road, and they're very heavy. They're made for trucks to drive over. The hinges are broken and it's a hazard for the guys to pull it. They have to pull it off because it's not on hinges, so very heavy. So Breakwater is the only one who gave us a price. They gave us a price of $7,200 to remove it, put a steel plate over top, and take it back to their shop, weld new hinges on it, and bring it back and reinstall. So Austin had another recommendation for a vendor to get a price from. So we will work with that and get back to you.
That's a watertight hatch.
It's supposed to be.
Yeah. So one of the things, and I'll talk about it in the GM report. So we're working with the University of Delaware for additional funding sources, mainly related to mitigation and risk mitigation. And it's through the IDA fund, I believe, left over from the IDA fund. And so we're working with the University of Delaware to finalize some final items, loose items, which we're going to send back to include in a possible grant to help towards pump stations that are specifically in the flood zone, getting electronics from inside the wet well out to mainly kind of what the mitigation committee is doing, creating those standards. So getting them outside the wet well, up over flood elevation, watertight doors, backup generation where needed, bypass valving, et cetera.
Yeah, that would be ideal. Candidate pump station 6 and pump station 5. Right
5's
there
on
off
California, 6 is on
Connecticut.
Connecticut.
Yeah, because 5 takes in quite a bit of water when there's tidal flooding. Keystone was in February 1st to do an upgrade to the SCADA system. The local control panel for the Kubota digester membranes was obsolete and no longer functional. So rather than replace the local control that's out in the weather and didn't appear to last too long, we got Keystone. Austin approved us to get Keystone to move all those controls into the SCADA computer so we can access them from the office. So that's went very well. With that, our guys installed a high level float to give us extra protection in case the transducer failed. So when the Xenon system pumps sludge, automatically pumps sludge to the digester system, the transducer, if it would be a high level on the transducer, it would shut the valve. But if that transducer would fail, it would keep the valve open. So we got a high level float and tested it. Keystone programmed it into the system. So everything's working there. Our new employees started. We had our master electrician, Andrew Courtney, start on January 30th. And then also that day, Matt Davis, who's a level 4 operator, started as well. So we're at full staff. And I think that's all I had.
For the repairs and cracks at the oxidation ditch, it's spring of 23. Is there any chance that could be done sooner? We seem to getting, it seems that people start coming here sooner every year. I don't know if that's going to cause us any problems.
So one of the things is Josh has been working from GMB has been working on an updated proposal. We have a proposal for the crack that's on the outside wall, the oxidation ditch. There's another one that's kind of in the common header where both ditches come in. That's the one that we're waiting on. And so once we get that, then obviously we'll move forward. You guys approved up to an allotted amount at the last one.
When we were out at the plant several weeks ago, it was right after the massive cold snap. There was a change in the flock on the one oxidation ditch. And I noticed that it's called out in the latest Viola report. And they had recommended wasting the top.
Yeah.
Has that been done?
Actually,
or had the bugs recovered?
The bugs haven't recovered. We are having a foaming issue. We are chlorinating the surface. The surface waste function that she referred to is not operable. It's operable, but it doesn't go to the digester as I believe it did once. There's a pump station behind what we call the maintenance office that apparently used to be a sludge pumping station. So I believe during the Xenon upgrade, that's where that surface wasting discharged to, and then it would pump to the digesters. Well, we discovered upon Suez's recommendation to, or Veoli's recommendation to surface waste, that pump station pumps back to the head of the plant. So
It's just recycling.
it's recycling it. I have an email into Charlie just to confirm that. But I just sent it yesterday. So but that's not functional. So what we do have, we have the foam pump going, and it's spraying a hyperchlorite solution to kill the filaments. But it is an issue. We have some foaming. We're gonna do some extra maintenance washes as she recommended to try to address the increase in TMP, but
So
mostly it's
you
just-
do agree that that was partially impacting the TMPs of the filters?
it is, yeah. It wasn't at first, but it is. And then we've been spraying for over a month now. So it's been an issue for a month, but it seems, knock on glass, seems to be getting better the last couple of days. So one of the remedies we're trying to just waste in general, we're wasting a lot more to bring our solids inventory down.
And any idea why it was just the one train of the oxidation ditch and not the other? That's what seemed very odd.
We have it on both now. It
Oh.
must be hydraulics. If there's a picture, an aerial picture of the plant from whenever, probably soon after it was upgraded with the xenons. And you can see in that aerial photo that there's foam on that one side and not the other. And it was consistent with the way it generally looks, but there's foam on both sides now. So,
Okay.
and it's a weather thing. An MBR is more susceptible to it because of your high solids content. You generally have a low food to microorganism ratio. So that's what this filament likes. And then, next year we will turn the surface sprayer on, at the first sign of it, because we haven't had this problem in the last 2 years where we had the significant foam.
Yeah, it was surprising to me. It was, okay, thank you.
But inside the process building, it's all contained. So if it billows over, it goes into the floor drain.
Right.
But it's a hassle.
You may have said this already, but I noticed a lot of activity at pump station 4. Can you just go through that if you already did? Because I missed it. Last couple days last few days.
We had a pump, rotating assembly that got a bolt in it, and it froze it. So it stopped it dead. So one of the pumps there, it was like a 5/8 bolt that jammed it. So we had 2 rotating assemblies at Hills for rebuild, but the lead times on parts are so long. They weren't to get the parts till the middle of the month. So we had to hook up the bypass pump. And then we pulled the rotating assembly. It just needed seals and bearings. So it was a quick, easy fix. So Hills fixed it within a couple of days, and then we put it back in and removed the bypass pump.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Any other questions? All right, thank you
All right.
very much.
Thanks a lot, guys. Have a great night.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, so I think most of what I have, Austin also has. We attended the Chamber of Commerce breakfast with the city. We had the joint meeting with the city earlier in the month, early this month. We had the wastewater treatment facility workshop, which was very well attended, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on. We've met with the DRBA relative to their plans. Last week or this week, SPI Pharma. Last week, we had a meeting, and it was with SPI Pharma. GMD was there, Robin, Austin, Kim, and myself. It was very, very worthwhile. We got a tour of the plant. We got to discuss what their issues are, what their plans are. And they're more than willing to share information with us relative to things that impact them. So flow and specifically iron and other sediments. And hopefully we can then correlate that with what's going on in our system and be able to work out something that is bothly advantageous for us, pinpointing where the sources are and reducing the impact on them. The other thing they also did share was their growth plans over the next 5 to 10 years. So we've taken that into account, and we'll discuss that later on when we get to the water tower. And then we had a meeting, we've had several meetings with GMB on the water tower well structure, which is also on the agenda later on.
So you stole my thunder. So obviously we had mentioned, we talked with the University of Delaware about a possible risk mitigation grant. We kickstarted the LCR program. And so Josh and GMB attended as well as staff internally, so we can get that rolling. We had a meeting up at DMEC where we had the State Police Terrorism Group give a presentation on the potential for incidents to happen in and around our infrastructure, transformers, et cetera, how to have heightened awareness, talking about security measures, which we have security measures budgeted for the next year. And I found that to be very interesting to see, you know, what's out there, what's new, the latest and greatest on the discussion, where are people targeting. We also, one of the milestones this month was we finalized all the information as it relates to the contract for Donovan Smith Mobile Home Park. And so all of that's been ratified. And so we're moving forward. We sent an email out today. So we have a progress meeting for next Wednesday at 10 o'clock in the morning. We'll have them Zoomed. Board's welcome to attend, but we'll continue to have those meetings publicly. I've had several conversations with residents in there. So that's moving forward. Obviously, we had our budget workshop yesterday. And that pretty much summarizes everything.
All right, first item on the agenda is a discussion about AMI. Austin's going to lead it, and Scott Lynch is here from DMAC to help.
Scott, if you want to come up. So to add a little bit of background, we discussed this. I think last February was the last meeting that we had this. And there's been an opportunity that's came about recently for a possibility of some sort of funding that could potentially help us out. And Scott's going to go through that. Updated presentation, updated financials related to that. And he'll go through kind of what the expectation is, what's being asked of us today in order to move forward.
Scott Lynch from the Delaware Municipal Electric Corporation. With me tonight as well as I have DMEC's CFO, Stephanie Dove. She would be here as well to add to the conversation about anything related to the finances of this project. And if the board so chose to finance this project through DMEC, how we could go about doing that. So I thought it important to bring her as well, so those questions could be answered today. So I would like to start with this. I do feel like it's December here because I am bringing tidings of great joy to the board. As I brought it here before, I've come in to sell a project, and other times I've come in now, I've come in with more money to help sell a very important project. So to begin with the AMI program, we have discussed this in the past. So the number of slides in here, you've seen majority of these before. I won't belabor them, but I will spend the time on what is the new part. So just a reminder, DMEC is the wholesale electric provider for the 8 municipal electric utilities in the state, absent Dover. And we have a partnership with American Municipal Power, which is essentially like us, just on a much larger scale. They bring economies of scale to various offerings, from energy generation to programmatic services. As you would remember, I was here previously talking about the Efficiency Smart program. That's something that we get through AMP as well. We're here talking about through advanced metering infrastructure, AMI. So what I'd like to get to is slide 5, if I could start with. Right there. So just to start with this, it is DMEC's responsibility, and I will read this slide because I do think it's very important to emphasize it. It is our responsibility to our members to find you value first and foremost, and to position you in this regard to implement AMI. Second, we're here to help prepare your community for the future, for the future of increasing solar penetration, electric vehicle growth, and other technologies that are maybe only in development stages at this point that are not commercially available. Reasons to implement AMI. Federal and state legislation is encouraging, if not mandating, a modernized grid. And federal money, unprecedented federal money, I've never seen this much money, is going into the electric sector to help modernize the grid and add to grid resiliency. So to use the words that my president and CEO, Kimberly Schlichting, has said, if we didn't bring this before you, we would be remiss. That's why we're here making this opportunity known to you. Next slide, please. So I thought it was important to give you a deployment status right now. Currently, the Lewes BPW, Smyrna, and Clayton are in the evaluation stage of AMI. DMEC last night presented to Smyrna Council. We have presented to and may present again to them at their March 6th meeting. The Clayton has been presented to on February 13th, and we'll be presenting again to them on Monday, the 27th, about this very program as well. So this is the interest. These are the last 3 electric utilities in the state. Dover is not listed on there, my mistake for that, but these are the last 3 utilities that do not have some form of AMI in place. To give you a frame of reference, I put in there the quantities of electric meters and water meters for the various utilities. Delmarva is in there as well, and Delaware Electric Cooperative. Just to inform you, Delmarva Power is actually on its 2nd generation of AMI. So they instituted it once before. They've now gone out and put another I think 10 or 15 year set of meters in place. Next slide, please. The DMEC partnership, you understand that. So we'll go to the following slide. And refresher about AMI and what it is. Simply put, you have 3 stages here. You could look at it as the infield stage, the communication stage, and then essentially the brain stage. The infield stage is your meters, be it electric meters or water meters. That's the little circles on the right, maybe you're, yeah, right. Those are the points out in the field that all the data is coming from. The communication stage is the units that are in place to handle the communication from the meter to a central processing unit. And then to the left, the brains, the meter data management system. This is the unit that makes sense of all the data in the field so that it can be accurately and professionally put into a billing system so that your customers can be billed for their usage. This is AMI. This is, as you can see the arrows, it is two-way communication. The meter data comes in. You can also, as a user, ping the meter on the other way to find out what's going on in real time. Next slide. So what's different with this program? I talked about enhancements, modernization. The federal government wants to put the best technology with its funds in the field this time. So the previous iterations of AMI we spoke to you about did not include these 3 optimizers. So the first optimizer is location awareness. What this really means is instead of having a meter that just reads a number in the field and sends the data back to a system that has to interpret it, the meter in and of itself can be a point which in and of itself can make it an interpretation. Meaning that if there was a fault or something at the particular location, that meter could identify it. If there was solar installed there and it was performing something that you didn't know about, such as it was installed and no one told the community, that meter would recognize it. Again, you're essentially putting a sensor at every single point in the field that is better than even the sensors that we were talking about previously. DER awareness. This is getting recognizing that we are having a growth of more solar. For your edification, the infrastructure law advanced the federal tax credit from, I believe, 22%, pushed it back up to 30%. That was a huge game changer when it first came out, and the law previous to this allowed that incentive to ratchet down over the years. This has pushed that incentive back up, so we're going to have more and more solar coming out into the field, and being able to recognize that is very important. Further to that, about electric vehicles, consider this. Electric vehicles, people take them, they drive from their home to work every single day. Most people get home from work, I would say, fairly between the 4 and 7 o'clock time period. I think that's a fair statement. That happens to coincide with what DMEC has to manage as the highest peak electric use times that we have to deal with. Most expensive times of electricity. When people are coming home, we're used to air conditioners coming on. We're not used to right now double air conditioners coming in with extra electric vehicles. So understanding how many are in the community, understanding how those systems work, understanding how best to build them is another measure that is another tool that this system can provide. And then transformer monitoring, understanding some of the most expensive and time costing equipment to buy, understanding how they're working on an hourly or to minute by minute basis, so that if a system is overloading, you can take more prudent and faster action versus just waiting for something to go wrong and then it goes out of service and you're having to do replacement. So these are the additional grid enhancements.
Does somebody need to be present for that and to be able to adjust the amperage or whatever you're talking about? You're talking about that you can do things to shift the electricity around to serve different areas.
No, that wouldn't be, this is more monitoring of what's going on. You'd be operating some form of SCADA to do that perform work. This is more monitoring your system about what is the health of your equipment in the field.
So if it's happening at 7 o'clock at night and no one's here in the building, is someone else getting notifications about different things?
So a notification would go to American Municipal Power, but you would be able to set up a flagging system. So for whoever would be on call or responsible for the system could be notified.
Okay, thank you.
So that person would not have to be in this building.
The ability to then shift things around, or is that something that happens automatically in the system?
Shift things around, shift load.
Yes.
That would not be from this system.
Yeah, this is more about transformers age due to loading.
Mhm.
So this would give us preemptive notification that this pole transformer is being routinely overloaded so that its life is being shortened. So we'd have the choice of either, putting a larger transformer there or transferring loads around, but not real time.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's giving you it's telling you what is happening in the field so that you could take action to mitigate whatever that is.
Okay.
The real time aspect is kind of like the next step forward.
Exactly. And this is what the next slide goes into. The next slide is, again, another slide we've seen before, moving from reactive operations to proactive. Instead of waiting for the outage, someone to call in about an outage, you could be not preemptively, you could be pinged and notified of an outage that's occurring in the field. You could look at when you're doing activations or disconnects, you can do that through the system. A number of operations can be used with AMI that we've discussed previously. Next slide, please. So these are a number of the enhanced benefits. I've touched on many of them already, so I won't belabor them. Next slide, please. Again, returns on investment, there are organizational and societal benefits, everything from increasing the efficiencies of staff currently in the office, and then assisting customers in the field wanting to know more about how their energy use, how they use energy. So, I mean, these are things that we spoke about in the past. They have not changed. And with this program, they should only improve. Next slide, please. Roles, responsibilities. Again, DMEC and AMP will be your advocates in implementing this program. We will look for the Lewes Board of Public Works to designate a project lead to assist us with this, and with the involvement of the staff here, both at the IT level and at the general manager level, to implement this particular project. Next slide, please. So here's why we're here. The unique opportunity before us. As I said, unprecedented money has been given to energy through the bipartisan infrastructure law. What we're looking for is a grant. It's called the GRIP grant. It's through the Department of Energy, and it's called GRIP, means Grid Resilience Innovation Partnership. And essentially, it's innovating and hardening the systems that make up our power grid. And the American Municipal Power, AMP, our partner, what they did was they saw this as a grant opportunity. They saw maybe this might be something we could use to get some money to help those that have not done AMI yet in their communities. And that is what they set out to do. So a little bit of the story is the way DOE operates is they ask you, if you got an idea, send us a concept paper. So AMP did that. They wrote up, this is our idea. What do you think? DOE came back and said, we like your idea. Please submit in a full application. And this is where we get to the dates here. The date here of March 17th is the submission deadline for a full application. AMP right now is soliciting interest from its members. DMEC is a member. You are a member of DMEC. So we're soliciting interest from our members who would like to be a part of this grant program. And to be a part of it, AMP is asking for letters of commitment. They are to be included in AMP's application to the DOE to say, we have fleshed out our idea more, and we have these people, these communities who are interested in our idea. You should give us money. Again, we're not given this money yet. It's an application process. In summer 2023, the application will be, applicants will be notified if they are selected, and award negotiations would begin in the fall of 2023. So this means just because you apply does not mean you'll get it. Just because you get the notification, if you still can't stand by what you told the DOE you will do, they will negotiate. They may lower your grant, they may adjust it, they may take it away, which is why when we say letters of commitment, we're looking for our members to really be committed with this, because it makes the application stronger. It further supports that AMP does anything in the future with DOE, that they are a good partner, and so are we.
So if we submit an application, you said they'll then decide if they approve us?
The Department of Energy will see if they approve AMP's application. So your letter of commitment, which would be asked for this evening, you would say, if you choose to vote for it, let's just say one gets voted on, that would go to American Municipal Power. The City of Lewes Board of Public Works is in for this amount roughly of money. That would go in AMP's application to DOE. DOE then evaluates all of the relative applications that come in from around the country, one of which would be AMP's, and to see. We're trying to make the most compelling argument that this is a good use of funds.
Okay.
All right. So this gives you the time frame of how DOE will operate. So to the meat of things. Next slide, please. So the next slide is related to the AMI portion that is covered by this grant. I want to be very clear. The DOE is very clear to say they will only provide funding for the electric side of AMI. The water side will not be covered by this. Perhaps there may be something in the future, but it's not on the horizon that we can predict right now. So provided to you tonight is a refresh quote of what we sent with the original packet. We originally sent to you on we received the quote from AMP on February 8th of two options based off a certain meter quantity. This was based off the previous meter quantity that was presented, the board used in its evaluations in the February-March time period of 2022. So based off of 3,845 meters, if the full GRIP enhancements, the project was priced out, the cost of the electric side would be about $1.7 million. If GRIP were applied, meaning DOE awarded funds to AMP and thus flowed to us, the cost of 1.7, the responsibility would go from that to $943,000. Now, that was in the proposal quote that we had presented to you previously from 2.8. As you can imagine, things are running fast and furious. We got another quote. AMP is working with a number of vendors. It's a lot happening right now. I wish I could give you more time with this, but everything is moving very quickly. We got another quote on 216. That quote was for an adjustment in price of actually down from the 1.7 million, actually down to 881,000. So a change from 943 to 881. So pricing is even better than we originally sent over to you. So again, this marks what would be the financial responsibility after the grant is applied. $881,000, of which those funding, AMP and DMEC are working together on options for financing.
So to add in, just for clarity, because Scott and I talked about this, the portion that has to deal with the water would be just the replacement of the ERT. So that would be pulling the lid and the replacement of the ERT, which is what is used to correspond the reading to whatever device you're using, whether it's a handheld, drive-by, et cetera. That is included. If you wish to do a full replacement of all water meters to put them on the same timeline for depreciation or lifespan, if you were to do that, the cost of that meter and the cost of install is totally separate from this.
And not funded by anybody but us, I assume?
That would not be funny. With the financing for this would stop at anything related to the electric meter could be financed by DMEC. Anything related to the electric component of the water meter could be financed by DMEC. Am I correct on that?
Water modules.
Water modules, yes. So that could be fine. The brass body that's in the grounds and any labor related to removal and putting in the new, that would not be financeable by DMEC, but we could go through AMP to offer that service as the Municipal Services Commission of Newcastle is currently doing.
So why would we replace all of our water meters at this point?
So just by way of using others as an example, so Seaford did it so that all meters were on the same schedule. Milford did it because all meters were on the same schedule.
You had some regrets though, right?
They had regrets based off the ERTs having issues transponding the readings.
Right.
And they're working through that. And I believe they have clarity from the wattage of the ERT. I think they're 500 watts.
Yeah, they changed it. There was a issue with the ERT itself. Itron has come up with its own product, which is only being exclusively used in Newcastle right now. We sent samples of those from AMP to Seaford and Milford, and they've been happy with the samples so far, and to the point that they placed an order for the new product.
So are these costs, Scott, they're installed costs then?
Oh, excuse me?
These are installed costs?
These are installed costs. This is total equipment installation, professional software. This is the whole thing.
Okay.
And this is the cost based off of the quote. Again, that you see, there's a little variance in the quote. You can see the number of meters in there is relatively changes as well. Why the pricing held again for the meter change? Again, things are adjusting at this time. So there's a small check on that.
But
But
Seaford also have problems with the meters as related to water coming into the areas.
When you say water, you talking water table?
Yes.
Yeah, so they ran into issues with if you have a higher water table closer to the river, whatever it may be. If those ERTs and or meters were underwater, sometimes they had issues with transponding. We see it typically here. It really all depends on where it's at, how much water's in the pit, et cetera. But I will say, and just to reiterate, the cost for installing the ERT on the water meter is included in this, but should you replace the actual water meter itself, the brass body, we use Neptune, and the labor for that install is totally separate. We can coordinate having a third party come in and change it or handle that install, but not included in this.
But I still,
Austin, are we gonna be talking about mitigation of these two going forward then? If that's a problem, the water meters?
I personally don't know how well you're going to be able to mitigate that piece. Because
Yeah, I was wondering because it's in the ground, unless you bring them up out of the ground.
one of the options, if I may, one of the options that have been used is to have lid hangers, is to have it's the wire go down into the pit. And then, I mean, if the water is coming out of the pit, I mean, that's a different problem. Yeah, but it would sit on the lid, and that also facilitates communication with the mesh system that's out there.
yeah,
So
so
down here in Florida, where I happen to be, I see not only cross connection systems going in, but water meters are often attached to them at the same time. It's all one unit. I mean, all once put together unit. So they're up out of the ground. It's not very attractive, but that's what they do down here. Of course, they don't freeze down here, so we wouldn't be able to do it that way.
Going back to, I'm still wrestling with what would the value be of changing out all of our water meters to get them on the common schedule? I mean, we have a lot of water meters that are not necessarily that old.
We do. A lot of our new developments are basically brand new. But again, it goes down to whether or not you move forward with the electric and you focus on the electric and then handle the water at a different point in time. Or we look at seeing how many we can convert and then dealing with Itron and the water meters, whatever's left that can't be converted, which means you'd have to change out the brass bodies.
Right, but for the majority that it was just changing the earths out, we could get, what, is it 90%?
You're probably more 60, 70, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So with this, as a reminder, the water side of this project overall is not at all impacted by the due dates that are enter into the water side as you see fit. Same thing, Middletown has done that. They elected to only do electric at one time, which is essentially what you want to do anyway, because the electric builds the network that the water meters talk to. But for the sake of
I was gonna say, to add on to that, the piece that, and I mentioned this to Scott earlier, is that you have areas, for example, Tower Hill, that aren't our electric provider, and how the mechanisms would work if you're not the electric provider, and every 5 meters you have this transponder that's attached to, and that's thanks, Siri.
It's an engineering game.
Yeah. So there's a piece of that would have to work out too.
So the next part I want as the next slide, this was the electric part. I wanted to include water only so you could see the pricing. You'll see under every single quote, the pricing is exactly the same. There's no benefit of the GRIP program through it. It's just the pricing is going across, and we did not have a more updated number on what your number of water meter was. So this is just what it is. Next slide, please, is a full implementation cost. I thought it would be good to show you everything on time. So with our previous pricing, we were looking at 2.7 million. And the revised pricing is still 2.7 million, but the incentive was revised. So the ultimate cost went from 1.9 to 1.8 for all in electric and water replacement. And this would be modules.
Yes.
If there would be additional brass body costs to change out and labor to do so, the cost here would increase.
Now, and I'll add, others have gone through SRF to seek funding through grant programs. What they've received is they've received funding, but that funding was essentially a wash by the time you take into account the prevailing wages. So they received a funding, call it 15, 20, 30%. But by the time you factored in paying prevailing wages for the install piece, ended up being a wash.
So with that and with this, to give you a frame of reference, March 2022 estimate for the basic AMI is right at the bottom, was approximately 1.7 million. So when I came and spoke to you before, a full change out of water and electric was 1.7 million. With all of the additions and the federal money coming in, the project is coming in at 1.8 million, but you have a more enhanced system than what was previously contemplated. I thought I'd put that there for a frame of reference. So with that, now just like to go on to the next slide, ongoing costs, just like with anything, you buy a car, you buy the car, but you need to put gas in it repeatedly, you have maintenance. There is ongoing annual expenses as well. We previously quoted you a cost of 156,000 by revision. Our last quote that has dropped down to 83,000. So that would be your annual cost subject to a 3% escalator. That would be ongoing expenses of this. So you could take the original slide, the costs related to those initial services, you could finance that as long as it's applicable. And then these would be annual costs that you would incur over the next 10 years.
And just this curiosity question, once someone gets on this, how do they get off? Can they ever get off? Let's say that we sign up for this full package and there's a 3% kicker every year of the $83,000. How do we, if we decided we wanted to exit the program, how would we do that?
So you'd be contractually part of the program for 10 years. And then after the 10 years, you could choose to do what you like.
Was there some advantage that a customer had by looking at energy rates and adjusting their air conditioning and all that? Was that part of this conversation we had before? Or did I make that up?
Part of the conversation that was asked,
Sometimes I make things up. That's the reason why I ask.
part of the conversation before was what advantage does the customer portal offer? So a customer can go in and see how their usage pattern is going. Think of this. A customer calls in now, they may take a look at their bill and go, oh my goodness, how did I use this much electricity? I didn't use this much electricity. Well, it's hard right now to go back and pinpoint when that energy use might have occurred. But when you have a system like this in place, both the customer and the customer service representative can be on live at the same time, looking at the usage and say, what were you doing at 9 o'clock in the morning?
None of your business.
Oh. Were you doing laundry? Oh, it's laundry. Okay, that's why your energy use went up. Oh, what were you doing at this other time? Oh, this, you could be on the water side. Were you home during this day? Oh, yeah. What were you doing? I was watering my lawn. Oh, and that might be why your flow rate was higher.
But there's nothing they can do real time to see what the costs are or the usage is at any given time.
It would be near real time. It's not moment to moment, so it wouldn't be as accurate as the SCADA system, which you're looking real time at what's happening. But it would be informational over the course of a morning, a day, to identify what your usage is and say, maybe I can make some improvements. And those are part of what we would use in conjunction with that information with our energy efficiency program. We could help talk to a customer and say, here's maybe some way you can mitigate that, whatever that is.
And while it's not directly part of this, what the industry is doing, Honeywell's new thermostats have the capability of allowing the utility to control a certain amount of the temperature. So you can give the utility the chance to regulate up or down 2 or 3 degrees or a rate change. You know, the EV charges are going to that rate way also. So this is the first step. This is the foundation that you need to be able to do anything else down the line.
Correct. You must have a foundation. The foundation is AMI.
Right.
To better understand your current system, how it's operating, and the impact as different technologies are coming in.
Do you guys work with Honeywell as a partner in any of this, or is that separate and distinct?
We are, our partners with us are on the meter side is Itron, and the other part is Silver Spring. So we have certain partners that have already been identified. The what Mr. Burnett was speaking about a thermostat. If we were to initiate a thermostat program where you could dial it, our idea is that we would be agnostic to whoever wanted to come, whatever technology provider would be.
Yeah, and this is actually just the latest generation of the Honeywell smart thermostat. So
Yes.
I'm not pushing any one vendor, but it was interesting that, you know, they sent out some technical information on it. So,
and as we said, this is a backbone. There are, just like when you have your phone, there are thousands of apps you can put on your phone offering thousands of different features. I think we're over 100 features that could be added onto this backbone. Everything from better understanding, as we said, these grid enhancements, to being able to actively control your street lighting. Not to have the street lightings on all the time, to be able to dim them down to whatever DOT would be an acceptable level. Having that additional functionality is an example of something that can be added on, but only once you have this backbone in place. So,
and just one more thing to interject is that the potential benefits down the line to the ratepayers is if we can start shaving the peak, that affects our rates throughout the entire day, year. So shaving the rates impacts everyone's bills without them having to be actively involved.
And you would be able to pinpoint where those peaks could be used, on what circuits, what locations. You could even get it down to the individual house. You could start collectively understanding where, I won't say problem points are, but where, some of your peaking areas of your community could be. And that could be an additional tool to help efficiency smart, or you programmatically target those areas to say, let me see what I can do. Can we do things a little bit, get you still where you want to be, but do it a little more efficient so we save everybody funding.
So when you find a target area, how is that modified?
Modified, so if you identified a particular community that was using a lot of energy, you could come in and start sending you could start sending mailers, flyers to those homes in those communities. Say, can we please assist you in some way to using more energy, our energy efficiency program? Instead of sending wide out canvases across the whole community, you can make sure you could target those particular areas.
And if they say, no, we don't want to participate,
Be their choice.
and therefore you can't, are there other means of shaving the
Sure, it could be the
without having the owner, the community accept or know what you're doing?
In that regard, that starts getting on a system basis where we start looking at voltage control, where you're at the end of the line. Are we most efficiently getting electricity to that particular community? And that's what evaluation tools of this could offer to the city itself. How do we become more efficient in addition to helping the customer be more efficient?
But I think I don't know if it's going to be directly an answer, but what many states and utilities are doing is this is an opt-in, opt-out program for time of day use and such. But if you opt out, you pay a higher rate throughout. If you opt in, you get a rate reduction because it allows the utility some control. Now, I don't think Delaware has gone anywhere near that yet, but that is going on in the industry at this point. And at some point, I think you're going to start seeing it pressed more.
Your question, sir?
I'm gonna wait till everyone else there. I'm not on the board,
Oh, okay.
but I knew I will
today.
speak
Go
at the
ahead.
right time.
The other thing is,
You got
Scott,
charging stations?
No, I have my questions teed up.
the 83,717, that's your vanilla, right? You can go up from there depending on what you want, like a la carte beyond that
Correct. If you wanted to add on
features.
features.
Yeah.
You wanted to better understand something.
Mhm.
We can find out if that feature exists and put you in touch and get pricing for it. A lot of times, if you have a feature that you have not, you come up with a great idea. We can share it with Itron and they may build it. And then you have that feature. Whatever cost it would be to build and then
Yeah.
operate all three. So the end of what I'd like to get here is with the next slides is getting into, this is the offering for AMI. If you're interested in participating, we hope you are. There is some requirements. The first being, let's see if we can get a vote of or some letter of commitment that we could get to the AMP by the due date. And then once there was that level of interest by the board, there would be some additional member needs where we could work with the general manager to identify some of this historical usage data that we could further prove to the DOE that we've done our homework, that we understand what's going on in the community, and we're going to use this money to address any issues that we've already identified. So that's what these additional member needs. Now, I did leave in here letter commitments and facts. The next slide, please. This is, what does a letter of commitment mean? Is that means you're committing to enroll in the AMI program and use the GRIP for its enhanced services. Is it binding? Great question. It becomes binding after the DOE begins contract negotiations in the fall of 2023. So if there was, again, we have pricing that we have right now, it'll be refined more. If there becomes some hiccup, let's just say DOE does not award AMP the money, your letter is no longer binding. Your participation would come in and we'd come back and stand before you and say, there is no GRIP money. This is the cost of participating in the program. Would you still like to do it as we have done before? But if you do want to be in, we would encourage you to stay committed with the program, because any impact of withdrawal, not only it gets you out, but it does hurt those that do stay in, because it's a conversation with DOE. They want to do the biggest bang for the buck. And can a utility do AMI in the future? Yes, you can. But we stand here today knowing that an opportunity exists. The idea is that maybe the next few years, AMP might come back and do this in the future, but we don't know. We don't know if the money will still even be there. I mean, the world changes from this morning. So we have a tiger by the tail right now. And it's, do we do it today? Or do we choose to take a chance in the future? And can you do AMI through AMP without going through GRIP? Absolutely. However, the GRIP enhancements and any funding that in this program is associated with it may not be included. So we could go back to a basic program, or you could do the GRIP enhancements with it. There just may not be any funding associated if you chose to wait. So the next steps that we have here really is to present before you and ask you consideration of a letter of commitment.
So if we can go back on the letter of commitment.
Yes.
I mean, you've got answers here, but since we don't know what the contracts look like, we don't have any of the details. A letter of commitment or a letter of intent to pursue it. But we would need to be able to have an out at some point if the terms are different than what we were led to believe, not led to believe, we think now or change in the future.
Obviously, if with the pricing came in and it was double than what we've shared here with you, obviously that's a non-starter. I get that. I understand that. Terms of it, we could share with you anything that we could ask AMP to share, any contracts that we could share with you, the project purchase agreement and contract, that a draft version that we use as a template. After that, and then you looked at it after a week or two after submitting this, you go, I don't like these terms. I mean, most of these terms are set by our contract with AMP. We are simply the pass through of this. If you didn't like it, then you can come back and say, we'd like to withdraw this. I would do it sooner rather than later. Let's not let this go too far, but let's, these are the questions I asked AMP. And obviously, this is the best answers that I've been able to get. So if you commit today, we'll do everything we can to try to get you comfortable with this. Because our contract would be between you and DMEC, and then DMEC would have a contract between us and AMP. And that's how we go, and that's how we do it in all of the communities. The standard contracting language would be, we're essentially changing out your name for someone else, and it'd be the same thing that's in all our other members.
So let's just say we said, okay, we'll commit to electric. And only if we get the GRIP funding.
Yeah, that's fine.
So one of the questions I have, is it capped at 50%?
It is capped at 50%.
Okay.
It's not going to go higher. It's not going to go to 75 or a free system.
And the other thing is, and Stephanie, I apologize because I did not introduce you. That was on me. But one of the questions was, and I think you guys are probably going to ask it, I know Earl will probably ask it, is when it comes down to that financing piece, I believe you guys utilize the line of credit up until the final project is finished, and then you then go bond market.
Would you like to bring Stephanie up?
Yeah.
We've done this multiple times for multiple members, so this is not new to us to finance this. What we do most of the time is wait until we have more people coming together. So that way we can go get a better rate. We'll put your project with maybe Middletown, maybe a Seaford. We have some coming in Newark and such like that. We won't be doing final financing until minimum 4.
Yeah.
Because of the timing of this. I know your fiscal year ends on 3/31. Thank you. 331. So we wouldn't be trying to do that until 24. The other thing we look at is, can we put it on the credit line? Because we see the interest rates are going to drop because they're going to go up again this year. Are they going to come down a little in 24? So we kind of watch the rates, watch the market. And we work with financial advisors, and we have a network of banks we can go to. Do we go to bond market? Do we do private placements? There's a lot of different things to come into how we're doing the financing, 10-year financings. And that is the only standard AMI financing, because the equipment's only good for 10 years. So we can't finance further than that for you, but we would be looking to bring you together with other of our members. So that way to bring economies of scale to your financing.
And prevailing wage would fit into all those, I assume?
No.
I don't, that's a good question though, because if it's federally funded, there's no requirement. Sometimes when you dip into federal monies, there may be a component that requires you to have like prevailing wages or Davis.
Yeah.
As I understand it, that any costs related to that have been included in the labor portion.
Okay.
When you mentioned, what I thought I heard was the equipment is only good, the funding is only good for 10 years because the equipment is, I don't know, the life cycle of the equipment. And then what happens after the 10 years? You have to rebuy the equipment or?
Yeah.
Right. So when you get to the end of 10 years with your computer, if it still works, you're not going to get rid of it. We just can't finance it longer than that. And it could be that it's outdated after 10 years, and then you're going to want to update, whether that be just a software update, is a whole equipment, if that would be depending on what the technology was.
Yeah, as needed, we replace a water meter. If an ERC goes bad, we'll replace an ERC. Same thing with the electric meter. It had a little bit more coordination because obviously it has to play nice with whatever system you're running. Silver Spring is the company that's building the network, and then Itron is the partner that supplies the ERCs both on the water side, and obviously the meters are Itron. So they have the component, the ERC built into the meter itself.
I understood you to say that this agreement is the same agreement you have with the other towns in place?
Yes, the contract that we would have with you would be the same terms, conditions that we would have with all the other members. So, absent any requirement of the DOE to have any different line items in there because of specific equipment that is being asked of this. But it would
Have
be.
we seen them yet? Have you given us those?
No, we have not done that.
Can you do that before the 8th so we have a chance to have our staff and our attorney look at them and feel comfortable with it? Maybe we can make a conditional approval based on accepting those things.
Absolutely, we could get you a draft of our contract language that we use and have used with everyone. Give you a template of it.
Austin, does this save us money?
And you have the potential of saving, you're giving the power of individual usage to your customers. So you're giving them the tools that if they want to conserve energy, they have the ability to do so by looking.
So the last time I asked this question, it was voice of the customer. How do end users use this product? And the other one was the cost benefit analysis, which is the same question I'm now asking him. So when it comes to end users using this tool, how often do they do it? Our average age here is
21.
Well, I'll just say me, 60, 64. It's probably older. How often does someone in my age range actually use this product?
It's an offering that it depends on the community, frankly, it does. So if there, I wouldn't say that I could answer that question. It's this, I can't predict how interested your customers are in their electric.
But you have to have analysis that you've got from previous installations on how often people used it. If not, and it's the same reason I asked it the last time, you need that information to sell this.
The information, the thing is, the usage of the equipment by the customer looking at their bill and be able to get that. A customer who's going to be interested in their bill right now is going to be profoundly more interested by the additional data that's going to, so that's going to happen. The benefit of this system is the utility doesn't know what it doesn't know yet. So having a system in place to provide you information that you don't even know you need yet.
But this has been installed in multiple places. You must have some data on how often customers use this. You have to have, someone should have that. I asked for this 2 years ago.
That is, and it's been 2 years of trying to find it. It is a.
Then it's not there.
It's not. The surveying the customers to see how well and how often they're using the equipment. We've not found reliable, we found out reliable usage. What we have found is a growing population that is less interested in picking up the phone to get an answer. They want to be able to go online and find out the answer without speaking to someone else. That is statistically higher than it has ever been in the past.
Any math associated with that statistically higher?
I think we may have in a previous resolution, in a previous iteration, we may have touched on it a bit. The number escapes me. I apologize.
So is it going to save you money? You being the city, by the way.
It has the potential to save us money because if individuals, what I will tell you is you will have more people interested in this topic as power supply costs go up.
Right.
That I believe.
And so if the trend is continuing power supply costs and those individuals tend to cut back on usage, then in turn, you could potentially cut down your peak, which then you go down to the capacity market. And then you start dabbling in if the rates that were being charged on wholesale change to where it's time of use, then it gets down to, okay, if you're being charged time of use, can you charge time of use?
That I understand.
Yes.
That I understand. But you're talking about, you've got to cover the $156,000 and whatever it is, 1.9 million for electric and water. We don't have to do water necessarily. There's a lot of costs you got to carry for those benefits.
Yeah, and I hate to keep sounding like a broken record, but part of this is about the electrification of the country. And if you remember the Sergeant Lundy report, when it was done with a lot of assumptions because they did not have the granular data to be able to analyze the lines. And as more EVs, as more heat pumps, as more, all of this comes online, we are going to get to the point where the next time we have the electrical system evaluated, which is probably going to be coming up soon here, we are going to be left with the same point of not having data of, are we overloading lines? Are we overloading transformers?
That I get.
And
I
that
get
is
that.
going to cost us money. And it's going to decrease our reliability, which impacts our customers.
One of the questions that maybe this helps is, Scott, when you did these presentations to other communities, what was the main driver for them? Was it ROI? Was it simply because they had to replace their system? And so they're looking at, this is my replacement cost if I do vanilla, and this is my replacement cost if I do mid chocolate chip.
Tell you this, I met with the Public Works Director at the Utility Committee meeting of Smyrna. First thing he said out of his mouth, my God, I wish I could get, if I had the system in place, I could have gotten the power on an hour faster. I could serve my customers faster. And that's on record with the Public Utility Commission. That's what he said. First thing he said. Clayton's reaction is, we got to come into the 21st century. And that's what Clayton has said. That's I could you could call that either one of them and they would agree with those quotes. That's what
All
they're
when does our
looking at.
electricity go out?
Ours,
Yeah.
we are blessed with a good system and a great group of guys.
Translate that. I understand.
However, history is not a predictor of the future.
Could I ask you another
We're
question?
stressing the system.
Let's say we do the AMI thing. I'm a customer that now I see my electric bill and I, make a phone call and say, why is my electric so high? What's my procedure now that I have this magical ability
Mhm.
physically, what do I do to interact? Do I go online? Do I find my clicker or my fob or what do I do?
So you have access to this information. How do you get to it? You go online to your account,
So I go online.
the customer portal.
Definitely a digital input that I have to, I don't know, a digital app. If you will.
As my understanding right now, I don't know if they have an app in place that's, I think if we're updating the customer portals all the time, I don't know that feature, but that you would go online just like you would log into your bank account.
Okay,
You would go in to see what's happening, what's going on. There would be charts, there'd be tables, there'd be information about what's happening, what time of day. That's what you would get into. That's what you would see. And then from there, you can start looking at your usage pattern. What'd you do today? What caused this, or what'd you do yesterday? What did I do to cause that amount of energy to go up or to go down? That I find far more valuable to a customer who's interested so they can start analyzing themselves. How are they using? Because just calling someone on the phone and say, I have a high electric bill. What can I do?
right.
You're already going to run down usage patterns. Yeah, turn the lights off. You're going to run it usually, but then to be able to see, oh, what was going on at 9 a.m. Oh, I was doing this. or
Okay,
that.
so I log in and now how far back can I go to see what the usage was?
You would be able to go back as you'd be able to go back. I mean, you started the program, so you go back to the start of when the meter was installed.
Okay,
Just to piggyback off of Richard's question, they have a separate system, so it's not actually tied to your billing system. The discussion of how often your billing system pulls your readings in from the separate login, customer login is totally separate. And that,
Right, it's typically from the meter, the meter data management system typically does every night a ping
yeah,
to get the data, the usage data. So you could watch and your data would be available to you at least the next day.
and there's a second piece of this is that NISC then has an implementation that we would have to work through with them on their schedule because it has to obviously play nice with our billing system. So just so you know, they pinged me today and I was like, oh, you guys must have been reading our minds.
What's the cost of a transformer, basically?
Oh my God, yesterday or today?
Tomorrow,
Um,
even worse, probably.
it's very high right now to the tune of anywhere from $3,500 to $7,000, depending on if you're doing 15, 50, 75, 167.
And how long to get them?
Well, we ordered a set June of 22. And the estimated delivery was end of December, beginning of January. And we don't have them yet. So
if you had a system in place that could be looking at your existing infrastructure
mhm,
and see where there are issues, if you could make some changes, some tweaks, whatever, to mitigate long lead times
mhm.
and not have equipment go down that you have to now search for and hope you can find, there's value.
Mhm.
Other questions? Tim?
It's my turn. Thank you. One kind of administrative clerical kind of question, and that is you identified three other towns in addition to Lewes, which are currently under review. And do I understand that, are you trying to, in effect, bundle all four towns together with, one as one application, if you will, for this grant? Is that the goal that you're striving for?
Our goal is to go to each individual community,
Right.
make them aware of this.
Right.
And if they choose to move forward, take the ones that choose to move forward and make them a part of the larger
Correct.
overall AMP application. So if only one of the communities were
Right.
going, we don't require everyone to be in.
Is it more impactful? Is the application more impactful if there's, instead of just 3,500 electric meters, if you have 12,000, is that is that more impactful for the AMP grant?
And to that point,
Yeah.
that is why AMP is looking at its 133 members.
Okay.
And saying the more we can bring in,
Right.
the way the DOE looks at it is they want to deliver and work with as few partners as possible.
Right.
So if they can get of their millions of dollars, if they can have 3 people to take up all the money and they only have to deal with 3 partners, that's ideal to 1,000.
Right.
So having more of our members in basically shows DOE that there's more interest in this from the perspective of AMP, and that's helpful. But if Smyrna was not in, and if only the Clayton and Lewis came through, it would still be of a benefit.
Okay, thank you. I am very familiar with time of usage metering. I used to run a program for a very large utility, so I'm very, very familiar with this technology. One of the critical pieces of a effective time of usage metering program is a incentive program in the form of a rate schedule that in fact incentivizes people, such as what Mr. Nichols was describing. If you get the information that your usage has the benefit of A, saving you money, or B, costing you money, then you modify your behavior.
Yes.
Our current rate schedule does not recognize anything about the time or day, week, whatever month that you actually use this, you consume the electricity. It's interesting for those kinds of people who like to deal with data, you know, in that nerd kind of way, not trying to apply any labels with anyone, but, or to anyone, but you know, most people talk and understand dollars and cents. And I would think that this is is the first step towards a new kind of rate schedule for the city to consider. Do you agree with all that?
Absolutely.
Okay, my next question is this program focus only on residential customers, or is there a commercial application to this as well?
This would be for all.
For all.
Residential
And commercial.
Correct.
And industrial.
And industrial.
Okay,
Be different size, different meters based off the customer class.
right. But they're part of that, the count of 3691, is that correct?
Correct.
And that data was from 2022 at
Yes.
this point. So
Right, so we could add a couple hundred
Yeah.
probably to that now.
Right. And with this, obviously your community is dynamic. It's coming and going, and it seems to be more coming than going.
Yeah,
And with that, the way our other communities have done this is they've signed on for the program, the basics of getting AMI deployed for 99% of their communities, but they have a new development coming in.
Right.
Milford is a great example, very growing community. They continue with this partnership, and we simply say, how many more meters do you want? We do forecasting. How many more meters do you think you're going to need? And then AMP goes out, procures them, and they come in and staff installs them.
and once this grant program, you know, if the board was to go forward and commit to this and so forth, and then you have that constant growth here in the service area, more meters being added all the time. How expensive are these? Are the meters, right?
Depending on the meters that you're looking at, we've seen pricing from under $100 to $300-400, depending on the industrial application.
for reference, our last meter order was roughly 85 for electric meters, and then solar meters, because we have next discussions, net metering was about 470 a piece.
So 85 for just a regular residential,
Regular
simple,
200 amp.
all right?
I
Yeah,
understand what these meters already, they just need to be programmed, and a regular meter that's $98 can be programmed into a net metering meter. So in and of itself, there's $1 savings as more solar comes in.
And you can order more of these for inventory and finance it. We had some members that say, I got a development coming in, we can finance the meters if you know you have something coming, if you want to add 10%, whatever, just to shelf them. We've had members do that too, and we can roll that in the financing.
We order that. The ordering of those meters would all be through this program. So any meters we would order in the future, no matter what they would be ordered through you and not through, for example, our Itron vendor as it is today.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that would that provide competitive pricing for the BPW by coming through you?
Yes, because we're looking at a much larger, Itron is contracted with AMP, which is ordering
Sure.
much larger scale. So you're getting more competitive pricing
Right.
through
Okay.
that.
How many transformers do we have in the city?
Oh, my God. I'm gonna say you're probably averaging about 4, depending on the size of the transformer, 4 to 6 homes on a transformer, more towards 4. So you're probably looking at 750 to 1,000. Mixture of pole top, pad mount, 3-phase.
Yeah.
Single phase.
That sounds,
And are they 7,000? You said $7,000 is the high cost, right?
Oh my God, no, if you want high cost, I just ordered a 3-phase transformer that costs $22,000.
no,
That
he was
was-
giving you was, you
Yeah,
know, the typical transformers you see on a pole.
Yeah.
You know, those,
Those are a little bit cheaper. Our last order was pad mount, so we got stainless steels for about $2,200 a piece. That's what we used on the beach side. Our regular pad mount is anywhere from 25, 3,000 and on up. All based.
How many do you think we would replace a year if we had this tool?
Well, what we've done is we systematically look at the ones that are starting to rust, and our program is we take a new one, we put it where the one's rusting, we take it back, we get it refurbed, and we end up getting a better warranty than a new transformer. So you get 3-year warranty on refurb, and you only get 1-year warranty on new. So that's how we replace. We don't replace. I shouldn't say that. We don't have the technology today to replace off a loading. We replace off a condition. So
And that's how most utilities do it.
correct.
So just looking at the math, so if it's $943,000 at $7,000, which is what I did the math on per transformer, it's 151 transformers. If you look at the ongoing cost, it's 16.5 transformers per year based on the cost that we're paying for the annual upkeep stuff.
but, and once again, not to beat the horse, but what I think other utilities have found is they are seeing more catastrophic transformer failures because of more people getting EVs. And the thing is, you don't know where the EVs are and plugging in and then a transformer flaring. So
If they had electric capacity higher than 240, do you guys have that on record on who gets those high-end chargers?
I'm not sure if they're capturing that or not at this point in time. But I'd be very surprised that any residential customers are installing anything more than a level 2. I'd be very surprised with that.
well, you can't,
You can't, right? So
Level 2 is what wattage?
240,
240. So
well, it's 240 volts
right?
and they're up to 60 amps.
Yeah, if you're lucky, right?
Well,
Yeah.
the new Teslas,
Right. Yeah,
they give you the ability to run them on 40, 50 or 60 and they self-modulate.
exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
But I will just add, I'm just someone here sitting ex officio. With the proliferation of EVs in the market, and that is where the incentives are for people who are purchasing cars, and the trend is going in that direction. If people are charging at home and if they are incentivized to charge during an off-peak period, then that is a very effective tool for load management. And I would think, and Austin, maybe Tom, your consultants would be able to speak to this better, but that should be a very effective incentive for you all to consider for helping you all balance your load and, managing what you're purchasing on the wholesale market.
with or without AMI?
Well, the AMI,
I'm being facetious. I'm being
okay,
facetious.
I'm not afraid of this technology.
That's fine.
It's not new technology.
All right, so I think at this point, then we need to discuss whether we're willing to sign a letter of intent with the understanding that if the terms change, the cost change, we can, but at least to get into the program. So
I'd also like to ask that we see copies of the existing contracts. So we
yes,
can start reviewing them right away and see if there's a red flag in any of them.
We'll have that over to you tomorrow.
You can put that into the contingency. If we decided to accept it now, we can just make that one of the contingencies.
so I think the motion that we're looking for would be to authorize Austin to sign a letter of intent with DMAC to pursue the funding options for this, with the understanding that DMAC will provide us with draft agreements, and that we reserve the right down the line, if the terms are not amenable to the board, to pull out of the program.
Did I do this one? Because I've been such a pain in the ass
Well-
for a lot of years.
I was gonna say, Mike,
But first, let Scott say something.
May I just have one modification? The letter of intent, I don't believe is with DMAC. It's a letter of intent for the program.
Okay.
So just to be clear on that, I don't want that to be a hang up
No,
point.
no problem.
Can I actually be even take it one step further? As I understand it, and Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, what the motion is it's a motion to commit to the program conditioned on the grant, such that there's no material modification to the numbers and terms evaluated tonight, on the further condition that staff review the agreement. But so it's not just authorizing signing a letter of intent for the program. It's authorizing committing to the program conditioned on the terms where there's no material modification to the terms discussed today and staff review of the contract. That's what I understand, correct?
That is correct, but there will be a need for a letter of commitment. So that if that is enough.
is that
But
the
it's gotta
draft?
be
that is-
contingent upon us reviewing the document.
Correct, correct, yes. So we would hope that your review of this would occur in a timely enough fashion that we could get a letter commitment ready and over to AMP by March 8th. If it can't, then if you need to have a contingencies in there to be further written into the letter of commitment, then that's fine. Ultimately, at the end of this, if you do not have a project that comes forward with grip that you don't like, essentially, I'm not forcing a contract on you. The contract has to be between us and you anyway. And I'm not going to force a contract on you that you don't want.
And you said the date that we needed to have this finished was when?
We need the letter of commitment to DMAC. Oh, DMAC has to give the letter of commitments by March 8th. So ideally, a day before, if you could.
Mike, have you seen the draft letter? I'm guessing that is what we would base it off of.
Yes, that was just a draft version of it. I mean, you can make modification you need to, but this is what they provided to us.
So I know I forwarded over the resolution. I don't know if I forwarded over the draft letter of commitment. It's within the board pack, but I can send that over to you to do a once over too.
Yeah. So, and that's fine. I think that what my suggestion for this, based on this, to get the discussion of the board going, would be a motion to authorize staff to execute a letter of commitment signing on to the program consistent with the terms presented here tonight, conditioned on the grant being approved and further conditioned on staff review of the document.
So moved.
Second,
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
no, wait, well,
There's typically discussion, Tom. You went right to the vote, but you're the president and you have that right.
sure that we know what we're looking at here because we're only looking at electric, not including water. Correct?
Correct, the GRIP grant does not apply to water.
Okay, very good. We're good.
You can add water at any time.
Okay,
All right.
okay.
Well, sir,
Thank you.
thank you very much. Thank you for your.
Thanks, Scott.
Can I just clarify for the record, Tom, was that a 5-0, no opposition?
Yeah, I said that. I'm sorry, Mike.
I'm sorry, I missed that. Yep, thank you.
My opposition.
And I'll be here for.
Yeah, I'm gonna go right into it.
Okay. So moving on. Wow, that was the first item.
Yeah,
Open forum, general discussion on a letter for the customers related to the new net metering legislation passed by the state in 2022.
So we discussed this back in December. We had a general discussion about what is coming. We talked about it at DMEC level. Several of the members of DMEC recently sent out letters because their fiscal years align with ours. And so what happened is we had kind of like net metering 1.5, 2.0 isn't here yet, and I suspect it's going to continue to evolve. But as part of that, there were some material changes within the state code, and it's 26 chapter 10. And those changes were outlined, and we had then taken those changes through working with other members as well as DMEC and working with Heather, because she's been crucial in this. We've compiled a letter to send out to all of our customers, alerting them of what is to come and the policies associated with that. There is changes, and some of those changes reflected, once again, that are in the letter, is talking about the cap and the amount of net metering that you can allow within your community. And then it goes in and talks about the overages at the end of the year, because net metering is a rolling average, but at the end of the year, if there was an excess, the previous bill had language in there that said you return that to the customer by utilizing the supply service rate, which Scott and his team calculated every single year. And it was based off our power supply costs throughout the year. That has now been reverted, and the language reads, you shall not reimburse solar customers for that excess at the end of the year. There's also provisions in there that talk about charging a fee. You used to not be able to charge a fee for the review of applications, the time that it takes to go through. It says that you should charge up to $200. I encourage you to charge $200, and I'm saying that because from the cost of reviewing it, the cost of gaining a lot of these applications come through, it doesn't have any of the usage on. We go through, we look at the usage, we have to confirm the sizing is correct. We also send our guys out there to inspect it, make sure the stickers are on properly, install the meter. The meter cost itself is basically 4 times the cost of what a normal meter is as of today. It can change and fluctuate. These are just some of the things that are within that letter. Scott, did I miss anything?
No.
So that's the latest and greatest. Mike and I have discussed, and from a staff level, we want to do some work to the electric tariff anyway. So we plan on implementing and adding language in there, but this letter is to basically send out, if there's no oppositions or if you guys have any comments to it, is to send out to all of our customers, explaining the backstory to it, adding a little bit of clarity. It's very similar. If you guys are on Facebook, if you've seen recent posts about Newark, they posted a similar letter about a couple weeks ago. It gained a little bit of traction. And so I fully expect something else to come through in the legislation in this session. And I think everybody can be well aware of that. So that's net metering 2.0, and then there's probably gonna be a 2.5, and we'll continue down this path. But this is to put in front of you a letter that will be sent out to our solar customers and also to vendors, so that they're well aware when the applications come in. This is the new net metering legislation through the state of Delaware.
Austin, could you maybe briefly go over why we think this is a fair thing, not only to all our, I guess, ratepayers, because they're They're supporting the solar facilities at the present time. Could you kind of go through that so anyone else that is paying attention would understand that, why it is a good thing in our mind?
Yeah, so net metering in itself, when it first started, we actually went through the program and we talked about this about a year ago, is there was subsidy out there and the board took a part of it, and it was through the Green Energy Fund. And we encourage solar, and we're not, through these laws and how things are progressing and changing. Senator Hansen's led up this committee, and we've sat on, Tom and I have talked, DMEC sits on it. And we have stated our position and our fear as a utility as things progress. And obviously we want to have a stake in this because, you have solar installers, you have local and state agencies involved. But one of the pieces to the puzzle is if you look at it from a simple consumption standpoint, a solar customer has a larger impact because their demand is instantaneous. So if their solar production is per se, if their solar production is continual, the sun goes away and it stops, they have instantaneous demand that could come on at any time. That's why in western parts of the country, and it's starting to move east, you start seeing demand charges on residential customers. And so this legislation kind of adds into the fact that you could have change of hands of solar. So for example, somebody may install a 15, a 20, a 25 kW system. They go to sell that house. It moves on to another customer. We have the ability to review it. It also says that, you're at a point where your usage could change throughout the year. So you could install it, you're a part-time customer, and then your usage goes through the roof. Or vice versa. You could be full-time and you could go back to part-time. And if your usage goes up and at the end of the year, you have a very large credit, it's basically saying you're reverting it back to the customer or back to the utility. We've used to never charge a fee. And we've talked about that since inception because there's a lot of time and a lot of energy that goes into reviewing these applications. And all that kind of culminates into what this bill states. But again, something will change.
Yeah, and just to amplify on what Austin said, in the beginning, the intent was to incentivize solar installation because solar was more expensive and to get adoption.
Mhm.
But now it's come to an equity issue because people who have solar are basically being subsidized by people who don't, which are lower income rentals. Your house isn't oriented the right way. You're in an apartment. So where we're at now is trying to go to a market that's more mature and is more equitable to everyone, while still keeping the drive to encourage people to go to solar. So, it's the infancy phase of solar. We're past, just like we're starting to with EVs now, and we need to look at the equity issues.
So do I remember that one of the problems was the credits were giving wholesale credits as opposed to retail credits in the past, right?
And in the very beginning, there was a whole deal. And then when net metering 1.0 came through, we added in their supply service rate. And there's a whole calculation that goes into that, which Scott helps with. And that supply service rate consistently, I would say over the past, 3 or 4 years since it's been in there, it's gone lower based off power supply costs. Now, in today's day and age, power supply costs are a lot greater. And that's the way of the land.
Is that calculated once a year? Excuse me for interrupting. Once a year, is that right?
Yeah, we do ours based off our fiscal.
And the other thing I'd add is that while often talked about, the cloud that floats overhead and shadows a whole bunch of solar, there's a time of day issue also, because after about 4 o'clock, the efficiency of solar cells goes down drastically, which happens to correspond when your peak demand is.
Right.
So, solar on its own without battery storage presents a real problem to the grid, because you're actually the more solar adoption, the worse your peak is. So, and that's why you're seeing more of a push towards, battery backups with solar to be able to, bridge that portion.
So the other thing that I would add in is part of the letter, we talk about that we are finishing out this year, this fiscal year, based off the previous year's net metering language, so that you didn't have to go and do like partial credits or whatever it may be. Since the legislation actually passed well into the fiscal year, we're finishing out the rest of the fiscal year, and then all of this new net metering provisions would take into effect after April 1 of 23. So as we close out the 22-23 fiscal year and begin 23-24.
This is Delaware law. That's
correct.
done.
That's correct. Scott, did we miss anything?
No,
If
So-
we had AMI, though, it'd be better.
much.
I agree.
So you need a motion to send a letter out? or-
It's, we put it in front of you so that you guys could have a look at it. If you had any suggestions, any edits, you guys could send it our way. Our plan is to send it out probably by the beginning of the month. So we
Yeah,
can get
all
out
right.
there and people can be aware of it.
Okay,
Okay, all right. Open forum general discussion on BPW cross connection control plan. Oh, HydroCorp, this is the one.
He's here. He's here.
We're gonna,
No, he's here.
oh, okay,
Yes,
it's
he's here.
after 5 o'clock,
Yeah.
amazing.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you.
Thank
Scott.
Thanks, Scott.
See you.
Scott.
Just a little bit of brief background. This was initially brought up to the board on December to discuss the state regulations on the cross connection control program. The board has contracted with HydroCorp to assist us in that, running through the plan, start to finish, implementing the plan, developing a plan, and doing some follow-ups as far as the outreach for customers, the ratepayers notifications, the testing, and the inspection requirements. At the last meeting, I gave you a copy of the draft plan that we had in place. We're still working on that. Press did have some comments. Press and I did meet, went over some of his comments. I need to work with HydroCorp to maybe implement. Some of them have questions about that. I've asked Paul Patterson to come. He's from HydroCorp. To maybe give you a little bit more detail in the end process after the approval of the plan, which is more on the customer end of it, how it's going to affect the ratepayers, our customers, how the outreach is going to happen. Maybe you can give us a little bit more insight on that end of it while we're still working on the plan, which is in draft form. Paul was at the Rural Water Conference today and tomorrow. Are you gonna be there tomorrow? And I think your class was on, yeah, on the cross connection. So I guess I can just have Paul, if you want to kind of give us a little insight, and then if the board has any questions, and hopefully we can.
Sure. So as Robin said, the first thing we did was put together a plan, which basically lays out, how your program is going to look and how you're going to, what steps you're going to take to comply with the state regulation. Again, once that's approved, we'll assist with implementation of that plan. The first thing we probably need to do is get some public education out, right? We need to get some stuff out to water customers, letting them know, what the program is, why we're doing it, how it is. In reality, it's a program to protect them. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a program to protect the drinking water from becoming contaminated. After that point, part of the program and part of the requirements from the state is there needs to be an assessment or a survey completed to essentially, we need to place your water customers into two different buckets. Are they a high hazard, high risk facility, or are they low hazard? And just in simplest terms, low hazard Yeah, they might be using water in some ways that could change the aesthetic quality, might make it taste funny, look funny, smell funny, but the average individual, they're not gonna get sick. And high hazard is, they're doing something that if it mixes in with your water, you're gonna get sick or someone could potentially, die. So that's kind of the next phase is we would start notifying those customers based off, the initial round. We'll work with Robin on developing that list. The first thing we want to do is look at your commercial side and kind of do a record review, essentially. Okay, we think these are your highest priorities, so let's go to those folks first. Then we would notify them. The way this program was set up, it would be, we would notify the business owner or the water user. You need to have an assessment done or a survey. That survey needs to be done by somebody qualified. So we can provide that a list of who's qualified, and for the sake of this program would be a certified ASSE surveyor. And then the onus would be on the water customer to reach out and have that scheduled and completed within a specific time frame. Those results would come back to us. We would look at them. If they, we're looking to see if they need backflow prevention, and if so, do they have it? So if the survey is complete and the surveyor determines, yes, they need backflow prevention at the meter as service protection, then we would follow up with the water customer and let them know, these are the findings of the survey. This is what you need to do. And then from that point, we're following up with all the paperwork. If they fail to complete the required corrective action, we follow up with another letter until, we get to the point, and that's where we reach out to Robin and say, these folks didn't comply. We need you to step in and kind of push them a little bit. One thing we can't do, obviously we're not an enforcement arm. So now as far as the backflow preventers that are installed, those need to be tested every year by a certified tester. We will also manage that program. So we would notify the water customer when that is due, provide them a list of certified testers. And again, they would submit that test report back to us. There is a requirement that all those records are maintained for 10 years. So, we're using a database. Everything would be stored in our database system, which is web-based, so you have access to it. Everything would be electronically, you'd have electronic records to satisfy that 10-year requirement on the record keeping. Did I hit on everything, Robin?
How do you enforce it if somebody is a real bad actor?
So in your plan that we provided, there should be some enforcement action. And also typically it would be through a local ordinance or a local water use contract. I know some private systems, they use tariffs, but usually at a city level, it's a local ordinance that specifies, we have the right to terminate your water if you do not comply. The state of Delaware actually wrote that right into their state regulation. So it does state in that law that you do have the authority to terminate water for non-compliance if there's an existing unprotected cross connection or if there's a backflow event.
And it starts with commercial and then goes into residential, I assume.
Yes.
And what's the Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
No. I just wanted, I'm trying to
No,
get the
that's
time.
correct. And I'm saying that kind of broadly. That's typically the way a program would roll out because your commercial is going to be probably more of a hazard. So we want to attack those first, and nobody's, really planning to get through the entire community in 1 year. So it's going to be a process, a multi-year process.
Does this tie back to the software that we purchased to track?
Totally separate regulation. Software we did is for lead and copper. This is for cross connection control.
But if you're going to do one, would you do the other at the same time?
We basically have to based off EPA. So the EPA is pushing it down through EPA to state. They're almost neck and neck as far as time frame. So it's the onus is on the utility company, which is why we're having to go out for consultants.
Yeah, we have until February 1st of 24 to implement the regulations.
To implement.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're getting there. Again, I've had conversations with Rehoboth. I think they've started some of their commercials inspections already. They've hired an outside contractor, I think, to do that. I think they're going to try to do some of their residential in-house, which is a tall task.
How are we looking to do residential?
We're going to do everything through HydroCorp. From the HydroCorp has a list of, and Delaware Water has a list of contractors, certified contractors. That what's going to happen is they're going to give the list to the customer. The customer, again, I might get this wrong, so you might have to about the payment. Payments being directed straight to HydroCorp or to the tester.
It would go to, so the contractor who does the survey or the test will charge water customer whatever rate they agree to. The water customer. So essentially you're from the.
I don't, can you unpack that for me?
The person that owns the water line going into the house.
So
the property
business owner, homeowner, building owner.
So how much do they get charged? You said it's.
Again, that's, we're not involved with that portion. We're just providing the list, according to what I'm hearing from Delaware Rural Water on the commercial side. And I'd have to come back to you and I can probably get a better answer tomorrow on the residential side. The commercial side, probably somewhere ballpark $150 to $175 for the survey. Ballpark for the test is about the same.
So it'd be.
I'm not clear on what type of, I'm sorry, Earl, didn't mean to cut you off.
Good.
No, I'm not clear on what constitutes a residential issue. I mean, does everybody with, say, an irrigation system have to have one? I mean, again, not everybody has them, a separate irrigation system. So would others that have central systems be judged that they needed them? We talked about, putting like Miracle Grow in on your hose in those little spray things that has the, that's your spray. There's a lot of nutrients and things in that it probably wouldn't kill you, but it wouldn't be pleasant either. Would that be something that you would have to worry about, people using spray things off their hose that could contaminate? I mean, at what level do you typically identify them as a problem?
Yeah, so on the residential side, it's a little different. On the commercial side, for the most part, what you're going to see in the state of Delaware, they call containment or service line protection, where a backflow preventer is right at the meter. And that's part of the assessment, is to make sure that on the residential side, that is not a requirement, and it's not a recommendation I would make. The residential customers that will be impacted the most would be those with irrigation, because they are required under plumbing code. There's a backflow preventer specifically that should be installed on that irrigation line. And if they don't have one, they would be required to install one. If they do have one, it also falls under the needs to be tested every year requirement.
And they would get charged every year for testing?
I'm sorry?
They would get charged every year for testing?
Yes.
But for residential, especially because Lewes just passed fire protection. So fire protection systems would fall under that also, wouldn't it?
Yes.
And especially if it was a glycol fire system.
Yes.
So,
But not all the people that have irrigation meters. So how do you address that? Because
Right, so the first stage of any program is essentially everybody needs to be assessed because we need to identify who has what. Because right now it's an unknown. There's ways that we can maybe narrow that search down by, and again, this is not in this year or probably next year when we get to residential, it would be, okay, let's start with those that do have irrigation meters. We know that's a known, so we can look at them first. Beyond that, because I understand I've been doing this for 25 years, not as irrigation has an irrigation meter, but we can look at billing records. In the summer months, if you see everything's peaking, their usage is going through the roof. They're doing something. They're either watering their lawn or they're filling a pool or something that could be considered a hazard. So we might want to look at them. You just had this lengthy conversation about AMI on the water side. If we had those hourly readings, we could look and say, oh, we can guarantee they have irrigation because you can see it's turning on at 8 o'clock at night and turning off at 8:30 or 8:45, whatever the timers are set for. So we can really do some record reviews and narrow that down. But at the end of the day, everybody should be assessed just to make sure. You don't want to miss anything.
And just so everybody is aware, this is everybody. This is not just the Lewes Board of Public Works.
Right.
This is federal regulation being pushed down to the state, which is then being deployed to us.
now it looks like some of the equipment that's used are either double check valves or vacuum breaker type equipment. We have we're a real low portion of the state, and the state is the lowest state in the country. Particularly over on the beach side, we have frequent flooding, and with sea level rise, it's probably going to be even more frequent. I would think the vacuum breaker type would not be a good thing to put a place in an area where you have frequent flooding. Is that true? You'd use double check valves?
That's a fair assessment. They're not supposed to be submerged in water. So now some communities, and sorry, I work in multiple states, so I'm gonna use Florida as an example. There's communities in Florida that their regulation says the vacuum breaker has to be installed above the 100-year flood line, or so that it doesn't become submerged in water. So that's something that we would probably need to talk with Robin about and see how we could address it. And the problem with irrigation in those situations, there's only 2 backflow preventers approved for irrigation. One's a vacuum breaker and one's called a reduced pressure backflow preventer. Neither one can be submerged in water.
Oh. Wow.
So again, that's probably a deeper conversation that Rob and I are going to have at some point.
Do commercial and residential have the same cost in this process?
For the testing, I would say yes. For the survey, the assessment, I would have to come back with you on that. I can ask some questions tomorrow at the conference and then let Robin know what I find out.
What kind of time and cost administering this will the BPW incur?
The cost to BPW is very minimal. It's essentially funded through the water customers.
Do we get reimbursed for our time?
I think it's not our time. It's the contract.
No, I'm talking about the BPW's time administering it.
The lion's share of the administration is falling on us. Really, the only need from BPW at that point, again, is enforcement. If we get to that point with any of your customers, you know, and then obviously we'll have meetings. I can't tell you that people won't call you guys and ask questions. I'd be lying to you. I can put our number bold and all over the piece of paper and call us, but they know y'all, you know, we're new. So
How about your coordination with the BPW? Is that much time that would take away from other things?
it's really not a tremendous lot of time. The most time would be up front as we work through the plan and get that approved. And then getting the records, getting the database built. Then it's pretty much turnkey. You know, there'll be phone calls, emails, things like that, questions that we'll be asking, but nothing drastic that's really time consuming.
How much time would someone that goes into the commercial property, how much time would they spend doing the inspections, et cetera?
It really depends on the property.
In general.
So let's use this building, for example. A surveyor that's experienced, I could probably spend maybe up to an hour, probably less, but maybe up to an hour.
What about a typical restaurant?
Restaurant, half hour to an hour, depending on the size of the kitchen. And again, we're assessing. So the survey is basically just an overall assessment to say, hey, if we have a backflow incident and something leaves this building, what's the worst case scenario? So we can assign a degree of hazard.
And for that 30 or 60 minutes, it's roughly $100+ per.
That's
per
what
hour.
I've been told. Yes.
Okay. And that's for residential and commercial, or is that just for commercial?
Again, the residential, I need to circle back on.
Okay, got it.
Not-
Is that-
Tomorrow I'll ask some questions.
I was hoping to have Bill Haig here from Rural Water. He's actually a surveyor and tester. He's still at the conference, so he couldn't make it. And he could give you more on what he charges, because he actually does it.
Did you say that for irrigation, they're all vacuum breaker type? The approved equipment? Because I'm here, I happen to be in Florida right now, and I've been noticing these because they're above ground here down here, of course, since it doesn't freeze. But I don't know whether they're on, they look like they might be on irrigation systems, but just about every one I've seen, and there's a lot of them, almost, you know, every block, there's several of them. They're double check valve. So I thought maybe that was the way to go, but you're saying that.
Yeah, no, so for irrigation, the plumbing code is very specific. Irrigation systems must be protected with an approved vacuum breaker or a reduced pressure backflow preventer.
Okay, what plumbing code is that?
It's it's Delaware Plumbing Code, which is based on the International Plumbing Code.
Okay.
Florida's got the same code. So if they're doing that down there, they're
So,
not
okay.
okay.
All right, thank you.
Might be seeing,
It might be the water to the house or to the facility, but most of the ones I've seen, I think all the ones I've seen pretty much have been double check valves. I was interested in that, but I don't know where they were going either.
Is there a level of education that the person going into the property needs to have? I mean,
Yes.
are they, what's their background or training or?
yeah, so typically, and what is in the plan that we provided is it's American Society of Sanitary Engineers. They have a surveyor certification. Delaware Rural Water teaches that class and can certify people here in the state.
So this isn't really that much, I mean, the parallel would be on the electrical side. You know, and whoever does the electrical work, yourself or an electrician, you have to have the UL inspector come in and put a sticker on. And this is similar to that, and the homeowner is responsible for the cost of that inspection. So this is really the mirror of that.
Yeah, yeah. That's never heard it put that way, so thank you for that.
The issue of testing that's required every year. That's,
Yes, that's the only.
yeah, I mean, again, that's just, I mean, that's just the regulations. I mean, we can't
That's
get around. that.
$100 every year.
Yeah, we can't get around that.
But you gotta put on the.
But that's per too.
That's what?
That's per, because then you start talking about, like, we just had the discussion about irrigation and fire suppression. If you got both, there's two,
Right.
That's
Correct.
$200.
because you got two different Ts coming off there.
Do I get two? Okay. All right.
Any and all aspect of potential contamination back into the public water system.
And your general residential might not have any issues once they're initially surveyed. That's it. You know, it's not every year they have to get resurveyed if you don't have any problem.
No.
It's only if you have one of these devices that need to be tested every year.
Yeah.
All right, so is there any specific action at this point then?
No, I just wanted to bring Paul in here because again, there was some questions about more leaning towards once we approve the plan, once we get the draft taken care of and move to implementation, how are the customers going to be made aware? You know, the outreach, there's sections in the draft. If you look there, there's talks about outreach. There's talk about the letters, talking about containment, non-containment. What happens if you don't do what you're supposed to do? So they're all in the plan. If you all want to just look at the plan, I can make copies of it again if need be. I'm hoping maybe I'll speak with Paul and the representative from HydroCorp, probably Bill, tighten up on our plan a little bit better, bring it before the board next month, hopefully. Have a more detailed discussion on the plan.
You can send me another copy of that. I appreciate.
Sure will. Yep.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Paul.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Open forum, general discussion on a proposal from Asplundh for tree trimming on the 69 kV line and circuits 2 and 4.
2, 4 in the transmission line. So this is similar to our discussion about a year ago, in which we had a contract with Asplundh to come in and trim in and around all of the primary, mostly all of the primary, and also the last year was all of the primary. This year it's primary and the 69 kV line coming in, which semi follows Savannah Road and then cuts over to the bike path. This is what we've done in the past. There's not really what I would call, other individuals that would be interested in this because of the certification you need to operate around high voltage lines. We've tried in the past. The only individuals that we've had interested is Asplundh's sister company, which they charge more than what Asplundh charged. And so we've done this, and Milford, Dover, Delaware Electric Co-op, and DP&L have done it as well. They're qualified. I think we're going to take lessons learned from the last one. And Sharon and I are going to work with Rhett and Asplundh to try and get ahead of the game when it comes to where the individuals are going to be for the public outreach piece. Obviously, you're going to have trees in the right of way. There's an expectation versus reality. Each person has a different expectation of how they want the tree trimmed. But we're going to try and be as efficient as possible. You'll probably still hear something and we'll handle them on a case-by-case basis. I feel like we handled most of all the issues that had came up either between Asplundh or ourselves. We worked through those. So that's what's before you today. I would let you know that we are not doing all of this by the prime season. Asplundh has agreed that they would not change the price as we walk into the shoulder season towards the end of the year. For us, it would be probably not start until November or December for one of the phases, probably the larger phase. So we would be looking at doing circuit, I believe circuit 2 and the transmission, and then save the larger circuit for later in the year, just because we don't want to be put up against a wall for getting everything done.
So it's starting this November.
No, the first batch would start probably going into March, April.
This year.
Yeah, depending on time frame
Okay.
and when crews are available.
And so it would be had, the expectation is all of this work would be done by the end of the calendar year,
Yeah, I would say end
weather
of fiscal.
permitting and so on.
End of fiscal.
Does the city have anybody hired that does this kind of stuff? I know you do lawn mowing and that kind of stuff. You put that out to bid. Do you guys do anything like this as well? Would you like to split it?
You have a contract with Bartlett.
Right. That's
That's an arborist.
Right. And that's the only contract that I'm aware of that is related to tree trimming.
And Bartlett doesn't have the,
Artists are
Asplundh.
certified to work around.
Asplundh has the market.
Yeah, and they had the market tied up everywhere for
It
this.
kind of feels like
this
that.
service.
But
Yeah.
what I'll tell you is that, and once my goal with this is that once circuit 2, circuit 4 was done, circuit 1 and circuit 3 would be done, and the transmission would be done. That allows us to maintain. What it was is it just wasn't maintained the way that it probably should have been done. And so this being done creates the benchmark. We can go through and with our guys, you know, we can do the best we can. Some other municipalities actually have contracts with Asplundh for continual maintenance, so you don't run into these heavy lifts, which is actually the most ideal situation.
Yeah.
But obviously, as being a coastal community, and you have areas where you have overhanging on not only your regular distribution primary, but also your 69 kV coming into town, starts to beg to differ whether or not you start to take care of it.
so these guys are up in Dover. Is there anybody out of state that can do this for us that's certified?
I'm telling you, we went down this path. We went, and what happens is you'll get an outfit that may be interested in doing it, but what happens is they'll want our guys to basically blanket all the lines, which defeats the entire purpose of having somebody do it.
And
So when-
Asplundh, I mean, their local office maybe is Dover, but they're a national company.
Yeah.
I was looking for just somebody in Maryland or Jersey or something.
They're in, I looked it up today. They were in all 50 states.
Yeah, they're huge. May I ask a question, please?
Yeah.
Thank you. Austin, you said this would be for circuits 2 and 4.
No, 2 and 4 were done. This was 1 and 3.
Oh, I apologize. I got that wrong. then. Okay,
Maybe
1 and 3.
No, maybe.
And this
Nope,
is-
nope, you were right. I was wrong. Too many numbers.
Okay,
It's
so
2.
2 and 4. Okay, but it's only on the primary side. We're not doing secondary. Is that correct?
No, I
So you're not doing service drops?
no.
Oh,
Okay, thank you.
And it includes the transmission. So some of the stuff
I
coming down
understand.
the bike path.
Right, along the
Yeah.
bike path.
So when would we need Asplundh to come through again if
What's the cost?
we are undertaking the maintenance?
We could do one of two things. We can talk with Asplundh about continual maintenance, and also we can flip around and also talk about us handling it too. But we only have 3 guys. So our 3 guys maintain all of the primary and secondary within town, which is a huge amount. So we feel like we do a pretty good job. It's just it hasn't been maintained. And now as they've gotten pockets, they'll be able to go and take a look. And if they can't keep up, then we'll entertain this again in the future.
Does Del Dot do this on their own?
Del Dot also does some, do you mean Del Dot or Del Electricoa?
Del Dot. I'm just looking right here. It says, talks about Del Dot standards.
That's, oh,
Should I just stop now?
Yeah.
I don't like to spend that much money, so I apologize. All right, I'm good.
So what do you need from us?
Approval of what's
You
in.
need
front.
$173,000.
It's, but again, it's not, you don't pay until the service is complete, and you wouldn't pay until, like, for example, it's all been budgeted. We budgeted in a 23-24 budget. But obviously,
Well, I make a motion that we do approve this contract and go and get going.
Second.
all those in favor on the
Aye.
question?
Aye.
Aye. Press?
That's muted.
Oh, is he waving his hand? I can't see him up there.
When do we get Tommy Engel for?
All right, so,
Aye.
all right, 5-0. Okay, moving on. Open forum, general discussion on an agreement to allow 16161 Lynn Road to connect to the sewer while acquiring a CPCN for the water, at which time the property owner would connect the water.
So let's add a little bit of backstory. So Mike and I have discussed this. What we're coming forward with is an agreement that would go in place with the property owner that basically said they could connect to the sewer system. And we already have a rate for an outside city sewer only customer. But what's happening is he's experiencing some pretty severe issues with his septic system to the point where he's continually calling out to getting it to get it patched and cleaned out until it can be connected. The process for a CPCN is not tomorrow. And then there is steps that have to be gone down. And so in lieu of identifying what this hardship that's going on right now is, would the board consider, because the policy is you must accept both utilities. It's not an issue of both utilities for him. It's an issue if he wants to get connected to sewer, so he doesn't have to continually deal with his backup of his drain field. So what the discussion is today, and Mike, you can correct me if I'm wrong. This would be the board would vote for staff to work on an agreement with the property owner, in which would obviously outline that he owes the impact fees and all fees associated with connection, and that as we work through the CPCN, which he would have to provide a petition for, that we would work through that. And as soon as the CPCN for the water was achieved, then they would have to come back and connect to water within an allotted amount of time.
Yeah, and maybe to simplify it a little bit more from there. I mean, that was good, Austin. I'm not I'm not undermining what you said. The board obviously has the policy that you have to connect to all. And so what you're effectively doing is you are authorizing the owner to obtain sewer service before the CPCN and water service is provided, on the condition that the owner enter an agreement committing to obtain water service and pursue the CPCN, and you're directing staff to document that arrangement.
And that's in conjunction with Mike's firm.
This cause
That's right.
problems?
I'm staff capital F.
Yes.
And does this cause us any building problems going forward? I assume not.
No,
Because of the
because
water?
you already have technically the Oyster Cove rate, which is a fixed rate, and you would utilize that rate until the water is installed. And all fees associated are exactly the same. He's still responsible for impact fees and all that.
So what do you need? A motion?
Mike, how would you like the motion to read?
It would be a motion to allow connection to sewer without water while water is pending, and directing staff, capital S, which includes legal, to document that arrangement with the property owner in an agreement.
And that the agreement would have to be executed before connection to sewer?
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
5-0. Okay. Open forum, general discussion on sizing and style of the new BPW water tank to be located at the Jones Farm. Austin, Robin, and Charlie, are you leading this one for GMB?
Yeah, so what the purpose of today's discussion is, we're semi at a crossroads, what the heck? Out a path forward, because we're seeking a loan application through the state. And as part of that, obviously, we have to identify how everything is going to be engineered structurally, the sizing, the type. And so this discussion tonight is really talking about the data that went into the recommendation from GMB, and also the discussion of aesthetically what type of tower you want to go with. And each one has their benefits, each one has their cons. Obviously, price is influenced here. Style is influenced. Some have a little bit more usable space by having a garage underneath, but at the end of the day, it comes down to aesthetically what you want to look like. You don't have to pick color yet because we know that's going to be a whole nother discussion. But at the end of the day, we have to get a direction not only on size but style, because it all impacts the engineering piece and the cost piece as we submit that loan application to WEAC.
And so just while Charlie's coming up, in clarification, Sharon had sent out revised slides for the water tank sizing. This was based upon our meeting with SPI Pharma and taking SPI Pharma's future needs into account, as opposed to what was in the original. So with that,
Thank you.
Charlie?
Yeah, thank you. Charlie O'Donnell, George Miles and Bureau, Ben Hearn's going to assist. Vince Luciani's been playing a pivotal role as well on this project. I'm just going to set the stage and Ben's going to walk you through the slides. I don't know if you can pull the slides up. They're on the agenda, pretty sure, but you don't need them right now because I'm just going to set the stage. Austin is correct. The board has submitted an application to the Delaware Health and Social Services Office of Drinking Water in the amount of $5.2 million to cover the new elevated storage tank project out on the Jones Farm. Yeah, we're going to walk you through how we came to our recommendation for the elevated tank volume, the size of it, and also show you 3 different styles that we can consider tonight. Hoping to get some answers tonight so that we can get into the harder design. This has been the planning stage. As part of this project, we also have forget Kim, I think it's like a $150,000 planning grant from Office of Drinking Water that pays for half of GMB's fees, and not only GMB's fees, but once we get direction from the board, we'll have to get our geotechnical scientists out there so that they can get all the data required necessary to design the foundation based on the final tank. And that's why it's important to get the tank size and the style, because the style is going to have a base depending on which style you go with, whether it's a spheroidal or a straight pillar type, and we'll get into all that. So just so you know, as Ben's going to walk you through this, is that the tank size, the volume recommendation, it's based on a couple different parameters that go into sizing tanks. One is fire reserve, which is related to what the state fire marshal requires. That's pretty easy. They give you a gallons per minute that you're supposed to utilize for fire reserve. And then there's operating storage, which is based on your average daily flow, correct? And that's kind of like with your existing 300,000 gallon tank that's down here on Schley Avenue. There's approximately 55,000 gallons of that it's your operating range. So every day, normal day, it goes in between the top to the bottom in that 55,000. That's called your operating range. And then
How old was that tank, by the way?
it was in the early 1950s. Just so you know, we've been talking to Chicago Bridge and Iron, who is helping us with the new tank. They're a manufacturer of tanks, longstanding manufacturer of tanks. When we talked about any leg tank like that, and specifically the boards, it will last forever as long as it's maintained properly. So sidebar, the board maintained it about 7 years ago, did a lot of improvements to it. So you're fairly well up to speed. I would say you got another, 7 to 10 years before you need to get a study done to look at any other new improvements that need to be done. So you got fire reserve, you've got operating storage, and then you have equalizing reserve, which is based on the demand throughout any day, the typical day. when we first met, with Austin and Tom and Robin Press, we used what was kind of like a national standard diurnal curve, how the water demand fluctuates from 12 midnight through till 12 midnight the next day. And when we talked about it, we're like, well, Lewes is sort of unique with SPI, with a large demand, a couple other factors being seasonal and so forth. So we actually got data from the water treatment facility. Vaughn and Eric provided it. And so we actually, the data that we're going to go through today is actually a typical BPW City of Lewes diurnal demand curve. And that's what you use to create the equalizing reserve. So those three portions go into sizing a tank: the fire reserve, the operating storage, and the equalizing reserve. So we're going to walk through those today.
Charlie, on the fire reserve, is that a duplication of what the existing tower has? Or does each tower have to have the same quantity?
No, so what we're doing is, very good question. What we're doing is, we're going to size what the city needs, what the city needs in terms of overall storage up in the air. And then we're going to subtract the 300,000 gallons that you already have. So whatever fire reserve, operating segment, and equalizing reserve are necessary for the new tank will account for what you already have.
How much of this will cover our open lots that will be built on at some point in the
So we're
future?
going to present it to you. We did it two ways. We did it as if, what would you need if you needed one today, 2022, which obviously we're not going to choose that, right? Because we know we have a lot of increased demand in the book. So we took 2042 as our next one. Maybe we could have gone out farther, but we know of quite a few developments that are on the books. So we know what those demands are. We know what the infill lots are within the city, so we can get an idea of what that increase in demand would be. We put a safety factor on those two numbers. And what we found out last week is that the board's biggest user, SPI. So just so you know, depending on the day, this time of year, they're 50% of your demand roughly. And maybe 40 to 50% of your demand. In the summertime, it's more like 20 to 30% of your demand. So when they talk about 5% growth per year or 10% after 5 years, it's a significant amount. And it really did have an effect when we stuck those numbers in. We're going to walk you through all that.
Continual demand. Continue.
Yeah.
It's 160 million gallons a year is what SPI Farmer uses
Yep.
currently.
24/7.
24/7. They only shut down usually one time a year unless they have a really big problem.
And they have, what was the word they used? Campaigns that they do every 3 weeks of like a different product, which actually use more per gallon per minute.
Almost double,
Yeah,
300 to 600 GPM.
yeah.
So this model, I assume, sorry, it takes us out to 2042.
Mhm.
Can we get something bigger that takes us out longer, or is that overkill?
Well, we think that where we got to in our recommendation, I'll let the cat out of the bag, it's going to be 1 million gallons. There's enough in there to cover any future demand.
For full build out?
Yeah. Yeah, because you gotta think that Lewes is surrounded by other water providers, so your CPCN can only go out so far, so we're accounting for that. Another thing to your question is that when we looked at the future demand, we assumed we looked at it two different ways. One was with your existing supply system exactly the way it is with the 5 wells. And then the way that we are recommending it in the way that we've been planning is that in the future, you not only have more storage up in the air with the new tank, but we're looking at putting in a new well at least 650 gallons per minute. We think we can do it out at the well field. We already had a test well out at Tower Hill. It was around 500 gallons per minute. Anyway, we figured that in our planning as far as a whole new well, which actually reduces the size of the necessary tank.
We can get by with 2 towers in total.
Yeah, we think so. Yeah, so,
Recognizing in 20 years, we may.
yeah. Well, no,
That's full build out.
yeah, I don't think you're gonna need another tank ever. Yeah, yeah.
But I mean, that's using very, long range numbers. It may never get to that point.
Well, in turn, so you're.
I'm not
talking about?
arguing against the 1 million gallons. Charlie.
Yeah, okay, that's what I was
No.
gonna ask you, okay. I just want to make sure if I had, that's the last thing I wanted to say and just setting the stage. We are going to give you 3 different styles. And we'll talk about those. You've seen them all before when you drive around, so there's nothing like earth shattering in terms of the style. But Ben, do you want to kind of walk through these spreadsheets or not spreadsheets, but these graphs?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so Charlie stole most of the thunder here, but
Always does.
so one thing I wanted to point out, we already talked about what goes into the storage components. The biggest thing which was striking that we found was, there's a typical diurnal demand of your water patterns. After talking with Press and Tom and Austin and Robin, we were kind of thinking that might be a little different. So we gathered data from the BPW's water treatment plant. We looked at 2022, looked at that supply data throughout the year to look at the BPW specific demand pattern. And we compared that to winter, to the summer, to, when SPI was off. And, we found that your demand pattern is very different than what typically you'd see. So on the graph, the tannish, yellowish line is what the typical demand pattern looks like. Your demand pattern is the blue line. So it's vastly different. Everything's on the same scale. So you can just see that it's, one is different than the other. We think that's mainly dampened due to the SPI constant draw from the system, as well as irrigation flow in the morning is predominantly causing the large peak there. So using that data, we kept that data between all the scenarios, just changed the total amount of flow. When you look at the existing condition with the existing or with 4 wells in service, the largest one out of service, you're looking at, you can produce 2,050 gallons per minute. When you look at the peak demand time, the time when your peak demand is higher than the well production capacity, that's what you need to have up in the air to bridge the gap essentially between what you're able to supply versus what the demand is. In the existing condition, that's 244,000 gallons. When you combine that with the fire reserve operational storage required, you're looking at 600 and we'll just say 20,000 gallons required in today's condition. Subtracting out 300,000 gallons, that's saying today you would need another 300,000 gallon tank. Stop me if you have any questions. When we look onto the next slide, which is future demand, as Charlie talked about, we're looking at growth that includes about 1,400 EDUs, industrial user growth of about 20% over the next 4 or so years, as well as what we're calling organic infill growth of about 450 EDUs during this time period. That accounts for what's, the total number is. So it's saying average summer demand is going to be somewhere in the 3.1 MGD flow. Peak summer demand is in the peak day summer demand is about 4.1 MGD. So just to note, the demand pattern remains the same. It's just the total flow increases. So obviously here, in the slide we're looking at, we account for adding an additional well, bringing your total capacity to 2,700 GPM with your largest well out of service. So when you do that, you do the same analysis, you're looking at an equalization storage of 660,000 gallons. Totaling that all up, you'd be looking at total required storage of 1.15 million gallons. and subtracting out your existing storage, you're looking at 860,000 gallons as the needed storage size today. That's the kind of an oddball. You're not going to get a tank for 860,000 gallons. So we recommended going with 1 million in this case.
And again, that's every lot is built out.
So what this doesn't account for is, if SPI, says 15 years down the road, we want to expand our production more, that's something that's unknown.
You also have undesignated CPCNs, and I'll remind you, the Mitchell Corner property. That is not, it's out there, potentially up for grabs. And that is not, it's accounted for because we know about it as of today, but those future pockets that may not have a designated CPCN.
How many of those are there around us though?
How many lots?
It would be how many large parcels?
Parcels,
Quite a
don't
number.
have CPCN.
Pretty decent sized number because we tried to grab them all circa 2005 in one big petition. It's the way you do it on the water side. The sewer side is much easier. On the water side, you send a petition out to every single property owner of the CPCN area that you want to procure. And you have to have a minimum of 50.1% respond, yes, we want to take on BPW Water. But when we did that, can you imagine trying to get responses from sent out like 750 or more petitions to all these property owners, clear out the old Orchard Road. And, people get these things and they just throw them in the trash. And long and short of it was, we got nowhere near the, and so we backed way back on the petitions that we sent out the second time. And pretty much you've added some over the years, but pretty much what your CPCN area is what we procured in 2006, 2007.
New Road is your exception because obviously you have, Mr. Dawson at Lynn Rd. That's in the middle of Tower Hill. That you have to go get a CPCN for. Capes Cove comes down a line. CPCN. Anything really up and down New Road, it's undesignated.
Can this shift though, based on mayor and city council's wishes in the future and more annexation or beyond our area?
It would, if they annexed, yes, it would, that would change the petitioning process, I think, to where the people would almost have to respond, yes, we're taking the water.
And may I just speak to that, if you don't mind? Keep in mind with annexation with the city, the city cannot hopscotch. The properties that are annexed have to be contiguous. So it would be an incremental growth. If in fact there wasn't any kind of goal to move forward with annexation.
Annexation actually has two impacts. One is that by code, they would have to get their water from us. And secondly, our CPCN or service territory is 2 miles from the city boundaries. So as the city boundary moves,
You push
there's
out.
potentially, now, at the rate things are being built up around us,
Right.
I'm not sure how much of a risk that
Yeah.
is, but
Yeah, that's the point we were gonna make. Ben mentioned the 1,400 EDUs of known developed units. And they are on the books. They're known developments that are on the books.
So that includes, Dunham and Smith, Tower Hill, Waterfront Preserve.
And
Bluff.
Mitchell's
Mitchell,
are not
Harvest, or Dutchman's Harvest.
Old Town,
Et cetera, et cetera,
Et cetera, et cetera.
et cetera.
My biggest concerns about these calculations, I think, is, and I don't think there's anything we can do about it, is SPI. They're such a huge piece of it. And I know they've told us that they're going to be expanding and so forth, but if corporations change their minds pretty quickly,
Yep.
they back out at any time in the near future. We've spent a lot of money just for their water.
so just press, it's unfortunate you weren't able to be there, but SPI Pharma, it's the only production facility for magnesium, aluminum, antacid products in the United States, other than they said there's a little one, and it's not from ocean water. They have between 50 and 90% of the Western antacid market from this facility.
Yeah, but Tom, I appreciate that, but there could be a development of a new product, which happened quite often, that it's more successful than this, more effective. This is an old product, and I know it's very,
Buyers,
go out forever, and something could be developed tomorrow, and that could close their business down.
Well, I mean, they don't produce product, they produce magnesium, aluminum extracts, and they sell it both through their own companies, and they supply raw materials to the rest of the antacid or anyone who needs magnesium, aluminum products. So yes, verily, new products come out, but the idea that a new product's going to come out that's going to completely eliminate.
Well, even if it has a major impact, you don't have to be, what was the worst case, but something comes out takes over Maalox, and maybe the other lines go through and continue, but I'm just concerned. It's just a big portion of this decision. I'm not saying we do anything. That's the biggest scare that I have about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that point that you raise is a fair enough point. I will say that it's GMB's opinion that SPI is not going anywhere, because the effort that would be required to permit a plant with the draw from the Delaware Bay and the discharge to the Delaware Bay would be extremely expensive anywhere else. And they've got the perfect supply of water that has all the metals necessary that they extract from the Delaware Bay water for the magnesium and the aluminum. We just don't see them going anywhere. If reason the product became obsolete, that's a different question.
Yeah, that'd be the biggest concern.
They paying their share.
Paying their share.
Yeah, we gotta build a bigger tower, right? Is this something that the customers are carrying, or are they carrying the weight?
I'm gonna toss that one over to Austin.
Your impact.
He's staring at me.
Your impact fee structure is based off meter sub. If it goes through a 6-inch meter and it meets their demand, that's how it is. They paid for that.
Yeah, but actually, and more drilling down on Earl's point, could they increase their flows to the extent that there's 5% a year for the first 5 years and 10% over the next 5 years? Could they get that through the existing meter, or are they going to need to upsize their meter? In which case there would be an impact fee.
Yeah, a 6-inch meter puts out 1,000 GPM. That's almost potentially 300% more than what they're producing on a daily today.
We don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't think so. We think they can get their future growth in through their 6-inch meter.
So
that answers,
it answers one question, but is it still the right math? Right? Given how much usage they have 24 hours a day that's going through that pipe, my pipes get used 8 hours a day, right? Is it the right math for I don't want our customers to have to bear the cost. Lots of customers, residential customers.
recognizing they're also using water when no one else is, which actually has a lower incremental cost. I'm not arguing against your point, but I mean, there's multiple sides to this.
I would guess I would answer your question by saying when they paid the 6-inch impact fee in the past, they actually paid for the demand of 1,000 gallons per minute. Yeah, even though they don't.
That's your policy.
Use that.
Did they run 24 hours a day? I didn't think they did.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't run batch processes. It's all continuous flow.
I think we went into it thinking that maybe they did have some diurnal flow changes, but it really was not. It was constant, other than those separate campaigns they called where they actually demand more water every 3 or 4 weeks. They do shut down. Forget how long. In
2
September.
weeks, I think is
2
what they
weeks.
said this
Is that
coming year,
what it was,
2
Ken?
weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks in September, but that's, it doesn't play into it. September, October.
Did you want me to do hydrant flushing?
You're right, yeah, okay.
The other thing we could do is get AMI water meters and charge by usage, hour of usage to flatten that curve. I'm kidding because I know that wouldn't happen, but it's another use of the AMI meters.
So I guess maybe we would take the size of the tank first, if you can give us direction on that, and then we can get into the style of the tank. Like I said, originally, both are going to factor into GMB finalizing the design over the next several months and get the bid.
So how long will our tank last? And I know you said every, 7 years, we'll have an assessment, blah, blah, blah. How long do you think it's gonna last?
According to CBI, they say they can last forever as long as they're properly maintained. And I believe that. I mean, it's already almost 80 years old.
What's the hurricane level of that?
We looked at that. It was 120 that they told us, or?
Yeah, it was 120. Yeah.
They
They didn't know, yeah.
The tank manufacturers didn't know. They guesstimated it was probably 90 miles an hour.
Yeah.
But that's not having any data on the foundation and, how it's connected. We don't really,
The 90 miles an hour wind is kind of the max.
that's.
On that-
Except it's for more than 90-mile-an-hour
When I
winds.
just think comparing things.
And it's also been there since 1950.
It's the current tank.
Yeah.
It's not the future tank.
I'm sorry.
Earl, when we did the mitigation calculations or assumptions for wind speed, we had, what's your fellow's name, Charlie? The climatologist, excuse me?
Brent Jett, yeah.
Yeah, and that's what he recommended would be a reasonable thing for our usage in the mitigation study.
For that tank.
For anything throughout, for wind in general, but the tank was the biggest question.
Was he recommending 90 miles an
No,
hour?
no.
No, 120.
Okay, thanks.
And just so that everyone else, when you had tried to get the original design data from the tank, those records no longer exist, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's correct. So Pitt Des Moines designed and built that tank. They got bought out by CB&I, who got bought out by McDermott. Going back, trying to find those files, there was a fire and a flood in the building that contained those files, and they weren't able to.
And the wind event.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the problem was, because I've seen some other tank drawings from circa early 50s. They're not gonna have a wind loading on there.
Oh, no, but I mean, even to be able to calculate,
Yeah.
we don't have design drawings to even back calculate from.
It's like the ones I've seen are like 8.5 by 11 sheets with the tank, it's a nice drawing and everything, but just doesn't have the level of detail that we're used to seeing now.
Should we build a tank that can make the other tank obsolete in some future date?
I'm gonna probably defer to Ben, but I don't think so, because this tank down here gives you hydraulic efficiencies that you wouldn't otherwise see if it's just all up in one spot. But maybe you can speak to that a little bit.
I mean, I would say without looking at it in depth, I mean, Charlie's explanation is good. I mean, it does provide a nice, pressure source right here in town as opposed to being all the way down there at the well field. I would say you'd probably need to look at upgrading lines along Kings Highway and the 16-inch that runs up Savannah and down Kings Highway to make it more viable.
When we first looked at this, how much did we think it was going to cost? We bought the land.
700,000. It was, hold on, when we bought
the land for the tower, how much did we estimate? It was gonna be 1.2 or something like that?
Yeah, never that.
it's 2.
When I first started as an engineer, if you can picture that time. It was $1,
Charlie?
it was roughly $1 a gallon for just the tank.
Yeah.
But it's more like $3.5, $4 a gallon now. So whatever we were talking about then, it would have never been anywhere near, 750 or even $1 million or slightly more, I don't think. Now, keep in mind that the 5.25 million includes an upgrade to the
Common header.
well field header pipe, which is also old, of varying pipe types and sizes that really needs to be upgraded to get the most efficient operation of the wells of the 5 wells.
What would you recommend looking at these different models here?
Of the models?
Yeah.
That you're not pulling me into that conversation.
You're gonna put your face on it.
You got, like we talked about yesterday, you got to pay extra for that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
No, I've got my personal preference, but everybody's got their own personal preference. I think. I'm not even going to mention, I want you guys to kind of talk about it and see what you come up with.
I noticed there's no balloon type ones.
Like the Ocean City?
Oh, around, you mean?
I'm joking.
Oh, yeah,
It's like a
there's
Chinese
plenty.
balloon that floats.
Yes. And we do have a field trip set up. When's that?
Monday.
Monday, yeah, to go up to where Chicago Bridge and Irons built the one over by the Cape and Logan junior high or middle school. On Route 24.
What versions are most people building nowadays? Because I've seen
Yeah.
the one where it's closed in on the bottom. I've seen that in a couple of places.
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing them, all 3 of those types all over the place. Like I live in Rehoboth and right across from where I live, there's the composite tank that has the concrete cylinder and then the metal top. And, there's advantages to that in terms of when you go to paint repaint it, because they do need to be repainted every so often. You don't have near as much to paint. We have heard.
The water spheroid is by far the most popular.
Okay, yeah. The ones that look
The top one.
like a golf ball on it.
It might have something to do with the cost because it's the least expensive.
Tidewater's building 2 water spheroids right now, the one on 24 and the one they just finished in Millville.
Yes, it's off Roxanne Road.
So what about wind speed? Do these, each one have these have a rating for,
Yeah, they'll all be rated to the 20.
okay,
Yeah.
The hydro pillar really is for large capacity tanks. The hydro pillars for large, and you don't see a lot of them anymore because they're pretty costly. And then the composite tanks really came about after the hydro pillar. They'll still build you a hydro pillar if you wanted it. But Chicago Bridge and Iron doesn't like composites. They like steel. And but they have good points. I mean, they have not been in as long as the steel tanks. And they start to see spalling and cracks and things like that. And they're not really sure long term how they're going to address the cracking and that kind of thing. So they're not fans of the composites, although you see an awful lot of them.
Although
That whole business about, you have space underneath the composite tank or even the hydro pillar versus the water spheroid. For the additional cost of those hydro pillars or composites, you can build yourself a pretty large storage area. So.
And just from the aesthetics, if you drive around, the composites, I mean, they're much more massive on the bottom. So they're, and especially given where this one is going to be located on Kings Highway.
There's another factor, so that, and this is somewhat intuitive, the hydro pillar and the composites, because of their shape and they're wider, potentially have the possibility of having a less expensive foundation system.
What do we need to make a decision on this? I'm sure there's a lot that has to be done between now and then.
You have to come up because you can't really engineer something that you don't know you're building. You're engineering for one solution is different.
Taylor is talking about touring another tower and all that kind of stuff.
You can tour a tower to left field. It's a big ass tank. I mean, it's huge. I'm not even get that shit. Yeah, you can put that. I'm telling you. You take the tower you have today.
I can make that note.
Big ass. It's threefold. It's threefold the tower that exists today.
But what's the process we go through to do this?
So one of the things is you have to decide, one, on the size. And two, and the sizing plays in, it really doesn't affect the pipe sizing because you're still gonna probably feed it the same way. But the sizing goes into your foundation, your borings, that kind of thing. And you have to pick a design because your design's gonna affect what your loan application is gonna be by potentially 30%, 15%, depending on which one you go with. And so all those factor into how you proceed forward. And obviously there's an engineering component and that plays into it.
I'll also add the style does play into the geotechnical
Yeah.
boring as well. We
Yeah.
need to get borings on the diameter of the foundation.
Ideally, they want them right on the diameter, so.
And the reason I say, and I call it a big ass tank again in the minutes, is that you will, and I've seen it, because I have one down by me and I've seen both. I've seen Artesian's huge one, which is 1 million gallons down by Indian River High School. I have the Tidewater one, which is off Roxana Road, and the one off 24. There are several comments. If you go online, Facebook, all these different groups, it's a big tank. You will get people that will comment on the tank. I think your greatest decision is going to be, what color is it?
So just
Or
to
what-
note also that the height of the tank, no matter what style it is gonna be the same.
Yeah.
So.
And diameter is roughly the same too, I believe. It's pretty close.
Yeah.
Let's change colors, blue and gold. I don't even know.
It's blue and
Cape
gold.
Penelope.
Like blue and
Only if you license it to them. Take some money on it.
Put your face on it for the right amount of money.
Yeah. Don't do anything for free here.
Starting bid, 5 million.
Exactly.
In my best case scenario for tonight, we'd have agreed to the 1 million gallons, and I think the water spheroid is the general consensus in terms of this file. We want to get started on the geotechnical work as soon as possible, because then that moves the foundation design and the tank design.
And remember, you have a planning grant, so some of this falls under that planning grant piece. Because
As much as we can get the design and the bidding paid for through the planning grant if we can get it done in a timely manner. I don't want to rush your decision making, but I think it expires July 31st.
And holistically, so one of the things we originally discussed just the tower and as we progressed, we've tried to look at this from the largest picture we can, which is why we're investing in the wells, which is why we're investing in the common header. Because it always when you're looking at this project, instead of looking at it through one silo, you're looking at it from a whole. Same thing when we look at our capital projects.
I make a motion, we have the 1 million gallon tank and the water spheroid.
Second.
Now, wait a minute, come on, let's discuss it. I'm,
That's where we are.
That's where we are.
yeah. Would anybody oppose, would anybody agree to get a second opinion on the size?
I could agree to that, Press.
It's just 1 million, I mean, I have not designed a water tank, but I've been involved with projects that are associated. And this seems like a huge tank for this community. I mean, when you figure that, I would feel more comfortable spending a few $1,000s, whatever it costs to get a second opinion. It's no slap it, Charlie or Don, I mean, or anybody, but.
Yeah, farmers, the swing in this thing. That's a huge swing.
They're your customer.
But even if SPI Farmer were to invent a new antacid, what's the time frame?
I mean, we're quadrupling capacity of the town.
My only response to that, Brett, and I know we've talked about this before, is that GMB recommended a 500,000 gallon tank 25 years ago. And, here we are 25 years later, and we're still with the same 300,000 gallons up in the air. So,
Yeah.
Well, it's very clear that we are so undersized. But I mean, you guys all know, I mean, I've been vacillating between the 750,000 and after the SPI Pharma understood but 750,000 still gets us, I mean, the 850. And then if we needed down the line to do something, we could evaluate it at that point.
The 850 is. Taken out.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So going to a 750 tank.
What's the delta
So-
between the two?
Yeah, that's what you need to look at.
So there is a economy of scale related.
So
Absolutely.
if you're going with the water spheroid, right, it's 2.92 million for a 3/4 million, and it's 3.64 million for a million gallon. So
That's a total of
Yeah.
$720,000 difference.
And that's a big difference in, I don't know.
Yeah, and there's the time value of money. I mean, so if 20 years from now, we needed another tank, and we might need it for hydraulic stability to put it someplace else.
Yeah, like an SPI.
just to put the 720 in a little more context, okay? So that's, we just said it's 3.6 million for a million gallon tank. But when you add in the cost of the foundation, the site work, the other work we're doing, you're at 5 million. So now the 720,000 is a smaller percentage of the total project cost. So there's economies of scale there.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Still $750,000.
It is, yes. There's another factor which it's really difficult to put a number to, which is, when you have that additional volume, you have a lot more flexibility in running and operating your pumps, your wells that you have now. So they're going to run less and more efficiently, et cetera, and you're going to save some money there. Hard to put a dollar figure on that. But if you have that extra capacity, even if you don't have that full build out or whatever, it still helps and saves you money on the, operating it.
So you went to 42, but did you have any incremental data?
In between those 24, no, don't think we did.
We didn't do any analysis on the incremental data. I mean, we could certainly do that to see like where that puts you in terms of total, but off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you.
I mean, I'm wondering because how quickly are we going to get to 750 as opposed to a million? And
But we're already short right now, 300,000.
wait a minute, I thought that's what our current is.
Right. So I mean, we need.
No, that's 750 additional, isn't it?
750 additional to what you have today.
But I'm saying, if we just wanted to stay status quo for right now, we'd have to put up another 300,000 gallon tank just to break even with no growth.
Let
No, wait a minute,
me
wait a
put it in context.
No.
Your current tower has enough that if something happened at the well field, you have between 20 and 30 minutes to respond.
Okay. My
That's-
point
that's
is,
your-
maybe
that's
I'm
your
misreading this thing, but aren't we looking at an additional million or an additional 750?
Those are your two options, 750.
Or a million, that's what I meant. So what the current tank is is not involved. I mean, that's involved, but it is what it is. It's not going to change. We're looking at an additional 750 or an additional million. That's our options here.
Right, but we would, I guess what the point is, to try one more time, is we would need to build a 300,000 gallon tank today to just get in compliance with current industry standards.
I did the
With
million.
not an
I do the
additional
million.
house.
I do the million gallon. I'd rather have too much than not enough.
I think to your question is that, like Tom said, if we were to get to rate today, it would be another 300,000. So that's 600,000 right there. We're talking about a million plus the existing 3 is 1.3. If you listen carefully to what Ben was saying, we're basically doubling the size of the town. And that's with pretty well-known future projections of demand, developments that are on the books. and SPI's growth, plans. So I think, I don't know exactly where it would come out, like, how it would increment out over the next 20 years, but, those are pretty hard future demand numbers so it could be like, 600,000 over 20 years, but it would fall out at 1.3 over at 2042. That's a good question. We just don't have the.
No, I understand. I could go either way, frankly.
Have you guys used the same process in designing the needed tanks in other communities? And if so, how many have been like this? I mean, can you say you've done a lot of them? I mean,
It's recent, I guess.
Yeah, Laurel's.
You want to talk about Seaford?
Yeah, we did Laurel. The only thing I can offer in Seaford is they have is either 1.8 or 1.7 million gallons up in the air, and they're
what's the population of Seaford?
half of yours in total water demand.
Population in Seaford.
We have SPI.
7 or 8,000.
They have chicken plants.
That we do.
I mean, so I just, their daily demand is.
Yeah, mention demand again.
Their demand is about 1 million gallons a day, and they have 1.8 million up in the air. Just for a point of reference. I can't tell you exactly how they got to that number.
Pretty well built out at this point, or no?
No, they've got, I mean,
No, they've got all
open.
kinds of places to build.
Mhm. And so just to further expand, we use this process in Laurel recently, not us specifically, but one of our associates in the Salisbury office, they did the same thing for a 500,000 gallon tank size.
Oh, we have a motion on the table, don't we?
So we have a motion and a second. We had a friendly amendment from press. And
Tom, just procedurally, so I think press offered in discussion, if it is, so to be a friendly amendment, it would have to be accepted. If it is a counterpoint, you would have to dispose of the current motion and then move to the second point. So what you have is you have a motion and a second on the table.
So I think what I'm hearing is that the majority want to proceed with the current motion that's on the floor.
Oh, we have to.
Well, or you have to
change the
retract
motion.
it.
Yeah.
Or you have to retract it.
Yeah. Well,
So-
And Tom, you do have the option that if press wanted to propose an amendment, that too would have to be seconded, and you can discuss that. But right now, if it's only a friendly amendment if the person who made the motion accepts it. So what you have right now is just a motion and a second, but you could propose an amendment if that be the will of any member of the board.
And the discussion was, press was proposing an independent review on the sizing. So do you, press, do you want to,
Richard made the motion.
I think it's going to go the same vote one way or the other. So everybody knows where it stands. So if the majority are for this, that's fine. It's probably great. It's probably going to be the exact size we need. We'll never know that for sure. But that's just my feeling. And if anybody else feels that way or wants to spend the money and time to do it, I would back that. But
if we go with the existing vote here.
Yeah.
Or proposal, are we ever gonna run out of water?
In the air?
Yes.
No.
in the ground?
We never run out of that too.
I'm just gonna tell you this, the way the aquifers run in the state of Delaware from northwest to southeast, there's so much water down there. I don't see that happening, at least in my lifetime.
Of course, you don't know what that.
709.
That's not part of the vote.
I don't appreciate your.
Yeah.
I mean, we got a lot of work down there. We're already working on our saltwater intrusion monitoring plan, so we're gonna be trying to protect ourselves from that part of it, but there's plenty of water down there.
And we,
I could accept the proposal as proposed.
So we got,
All right.
we call for the.
So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, 4-1.
Thank you.
Chris, that's usually my job, by the way.
I'm taking your place now.
did it? I just want to make sure.
Disagree. We voted again.
Thank you. You voted against it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, guys. That wasn't personal.
Open forum, general discussion on BPW obtaining pollution insurance policy.
Josh, can you promote Mike Sutherland? Yes. So I'll add a little bit of background as Mike comes in here. So when we went through our discussions of our annual insurance renewal, which we do August and September, we had brought up the idea, and we've talked about it before, about holding pollution insurance. And so it initially started as a very small discussion topic, and it's morphed into a much larger discussion in which we're reviewing, obviously, the Inframark insurance requirements that are out there and what provisions are in there for us, but also what the benefit would be for us to hold our own insurance policy, not only for the wastewater treatment plant, for the pump stations, et cetera. And so myself and with the help of Mike Sutherland, who with HMS, they handle all of our insurance needs and have been for a very long time. I brought Richard and Tom into the discussions. He's been in, Chris has been in, Robin has been in. We've discussed having a policy because our current cash reserve model, our cash reserve policy says that we self-insure up to $1 million. And so our policy states that we're self-insuring ourselves for $1 million when it comes to pollution. So we looked at both flood and pollution because we're self-insuring for both, to see what the economics look like. And so we sent over all of our information as it relates to really the biggest contributors, which would be pump stations that are in the floodplain and also the wastewater treatment plant. Then we expanded and say, look, what about if we look at all pump stations along with the wastewater treatment plant? And so before you have a couple different proposals. One is to include all pump stations and the wastewater treatment plant. One proposal is to include just the pump stations. Mind you, the current Inframark contract has provisions for pollution insurance as it relates to pollution, with us being additional insured on that policy for the wastewater treatment plant.
How much do they cover for the wastewater treatment?
I believe it's 2 million.
Did we get copies from them?
We did. I forwarded it over to Mike for review.
So
Mike, I was gonna say, just so everybody's aware, Mike's online. So as you guys have questions or comments, I know, Tom, you're about to speak. Mike's there to help.
So I have a question about, well, I looked this all over and it looks like it's pretty good. What we'd be doing is, if we bought insurance, we'd be freeing up $1 million or less, whatever the cost of insurance is, from our cash reserves. So that, I think, is a really a plus for insurance. The other question I have, Mike, the plant. If you include the plant, you're really only going up another $3,500 or so. And what about if something happens and we don't have the plant down the road and we take it off?
Yeah, we can remove the plant at any time and adjust it accordingly.
Good. That's what I expected you to say. So frankly, my recommendation is we buy insurance because it frees up the $1 million, and we include the plant and all the pump stations. And down the road, if we'd said, okay, well, whatever happens, you can always take it back, some of it back.
So are we so if something happens at the wastewater treatment plant today and Inframark carries an insurance policy and we carry an insurance policy, how does that math work for a payout?
Yeah, so we would, obviously, the lawsuits come to us, then your insurance carrier would tender the claim to your contractor. And then, depending on the type of claim, that they would decide whether or not, we had any participation in the claim. But then they would, hopefully, if the contract's right and the claim that triggers is covered under their policy, then our policy would be excess over their policy.
So they're the first loss position. Is that the way to say it?
Yeah, that's a great way to say it.
And what if we don't have that the plant coverage? What happens in the same event?
Well, you're kind of rolling the dice that their policy is going to cover it, and then you would not have defense coverage, or so your carrier wouldn't respond, or coverage wouldn't trigger. So you would get the lawsuit, and then I guess bring in your attorney, submit the lawsuit over to your contractor, and then see how that plays out. But you'd be self-insuring the defense in that situation.
We are included under their policy as an additional insured.
That's correct. Yep.
So technically, the policy then would defend us.
Yes, that's right. They should defend you under the policy, and you would share those limits.
And we would then have an excess policy too.
Yeah, if you purchase this policy and include.
If we spend the extra 3,500 in covering the plant, we would now have basically their million plus our million.
How much would it cost to rebuild the plant?
Well, this is
just pollution.
This is pollution.
This is liability coverage.
Oh, okay.
This is only liability coverage.
But if we don't have, my understanding is if we don't do the plant insurance, pollution insurance, and the something happens at the plant, BPW, because we hold the license, gets sued, and then we incur legal costs.
Well,
to flip it off onto.
Well, that's true. You could. I mean, if they would balk at it, which they shouldn't, because you're additional insured on their policy. So,
it's worth buying the policy.
That's my point. I think it is
from that standpoint.
For $3,500, it's really worth.
You're getting that coverage and you're getting an extra $1 million.
Yeah, and no hassle from, who's, where do we go from here?
Yeah, it's working.
And the way that we looked at this is we looked at where do you think the claim would come by, and it would be mainly from what we could come up with, the idea of the wastewater treatment plant and the pump stations being next to the canal. If you have a failure, that's where it's going to go, and then you're going to get hit by regulatory fines. And so that's where the idea of this came from. We discussed flood ever since what happened down in Florida this past October. I believe it's the market, and Mike can confirm this, is just absolutely insanity.
Yes.
This is fairly new. Is that what we understand?
No, so this is strictly pollution. Now, Mike can tell you that the whole idea of parametric insurance is crazy, but it also is very expensive.
Okay.
If house is on the side of a mountain, flood is really cheap. You're in Lewes, Delaware, and your plant is right basically a little over sea level. It's expensive.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So the limits are the pollution liability per pollution conditions of $1 million as a limit.
That's right. It's a 1 million per occurrence limit, and then a 2 million aggregate limit. And
So-
so the aggregate, we could have two $1 million.
No,
situation here.
Means you get 1 million for the first occurrence and then you get another million for the second occurrence, but you don't get over 2 million in a year.
That's right. Yep.
But we wouldn't need either of those coverages or the operator's coverage would start. And if there was some spillover, then these come into a play.
If you include the plant, or
Yes.
don't include the plant.
No, if you do,
If you do include the plant, yes, then this would be
it's spill only spillover.
yes.
All right, talk to me like I'm 12. So the policy that our operators have is $2 million. Correct?
I don't remember what,
I'm almost positive. I just sent all that over.
Yeah, I believe, and I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me, but I believe it is 2 million.
So if their coverage is $2 million, and I look at the limits on the next page,
yeah,
this aggregate of $2 million.
that's if we did our policy only.
So we can have a doubled insured.
Well,
We can insure it and they can insure it.
if they have 2 million
Mhm.
and the claim is for 500,000
Mhm.
and they honor everything, then we're not involved and we won't have anything to do. But if they have 2 million and the claim is 2.5 million, then we have up to 1 million over their 2 million. The aggregate only comes into play if you have more than one occurrence in a year.
Understand?
Okay,
Yep, that's perfect. And so really you would have potentially upwards of 3 million per any one occurrence, with our million being the excess if their first 2 million, triggered. And if their first 2 million did not trigger, then our 1 million would trigger.
And what would be an occurrence where ours would trigger, but theirs wouldn't trigger?
when they don't have coverage.
That's a
But they have.
that's a whole other question. You'd have to get there. So all the pollution policies are not built the same.
Hey, do
And
we
so
have a policy?
I sent it off.
what's that?
Sent it off yesterday or 2 days ago to Mike for review.
Okay.
One that we're getting proposed is pretty broad. I went through all the coverages. This is just a limit. What the policy has in it is, here's what we mean by pollution.
So it sounds like Mike needs to give us a read on both these.
Yeah. I mean, so at a high level, we have on-site cleanup. We have off-site cleanup. We have third-party bodily injury. We have third-party property damage, kind of at a high level, which are the coverages that we would need in a pollution situation. And what we did, just so the board is aware, when you're, and Tom, I guess will appreciate this, you bring in experts on certain coverages because it's really impossible to be an expert on all coverages. So we have a pollution expert that comes in who we pay independently because that's all they do day in and day out is pollution. And so we got a number of proposals, and then we did coverage reviews on all of those proposals. And then from there presented the proposal with the broadest coverage. And then between the last, since August, the Board of Public Works team and the HMS team have been going back and forth as to trying to identify where the biggest exposure might lie, so that we weren't buying, so that we could keep the pricing at a reasonable amount versus just kind of covering everything. And so then we identified the wastewater treatment plant and the and the pump stations as really the areas that we needed to sort of schedule on the policy.
I think the belts and suspenders are a good idea. If you look through the policies and say, here's the gaps, we're either covering something that wasn't covered or it's duplicate and we can get our heads around.
I haven't, yeah, I can easily do that. Yeah.
Tom, just so you know, I have that and I'll email it over to you. So the board can have that.
Yeah, well, no, what he's saying is take a look at their policy and see what.
Oh, right.
Are.
Right. Okay, got you. Sorry, thank you.
Yours, but I mean, I haven't seen the policy itself, but I've seen the coverages that they're offering. The headings of the coverages they're offering and the explanation.
Yep, that's all I've seen too. Yeah.
That idea is a great idea.
Yeah.
I'm not poo-pooing that at all.
No.
Like FYI, I forwarded you, I think it was yesterday or the day before, an email that had all of their insurance documents in it.
You followed it to me?
No, forwarded to Mike,
Well, then, Mike.
Yeah,
but I'll send it to you too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, just follow up, make sure you have it. I just want to make sure you do, because if you don't, then I'll resend it.
No, we are actually started the process of reviewing it already.
It's a lot.
Yep. Yes, it is. Yeah, definitely.
And there's no, like, for example, there's no rush into this, but obviously we wanted to put it in front of you. So if you feel more comfortable waiting a month, Mike and I can work together. If we need to update anything accordingly, we can do so, and we can bring this back next month. Completely.
As long as Tom has eyes on it, I'm good.
I think what I'm said originally was well, we could decide whether we're going to even pursue pollution insurance first, don't you think? If we don't want to pursue it, there's no reason to go through all this work.
But I think finding out where the gaps are or where.
What I know, I meant have it or not have it at all. And
I think
freeing up the extra million that for the yeah, thank you, is worthwhile having insurance. That's my recommendation.
Yeah, I think that was the consensus. So, all right, so then we'll postpone this to the next meeting and get Tom and Mike's input on the gaps. And then we can move forward at that point.
Good.
Does that work with you, Mike?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Okay, thank you very much.
Oh, thanks, guys.
Okay. Open forum, general discussion on EV charging rates for the city of Lewes. Austin, you want to start this off? And
So when it comes to this, there's not a lot of data out here from the utility standpoint. So the city of Newark is one of the other ones that have done it, but a lot of other ones are kind of where we were, call it 4 or 5 years ago. They're starting to implement EV charging stations. Some are using them at their municipal complexes. For example, Seaford has one, but they're not charging for it yet. And Newcastle Municipal Services Commission started. They were working through the development of a rate through their rate consultant. The city had started the process mutually between us, looking at pursuing the viability of putting stations in that would be owned and maintained by the city. Obviously, there's a component to that, and that's not only the equipment and the possible grant that would be out there for it, but also simply put the location, the capital investment, et cetera, that goes with it. One of the questions that was brought up was what would be our rate should we move forward in this direction? Simply put, our rate to the city, if that is the path that we go down or that the city goes down. I think the simplest way based off the rate structure that you have today is it would be commercial small generation because it's a commercial use, which would just mean every meter that they would have a standard rate to serve charge based off of that. And then obviously the rates associated with it, which would be the commercial rate, PCA, et cetera. That's the
What's
easiest.
the voltage that comes out of for those purposes?
It depends on how you would like it set up. So
When
each,
you say the voltages, you
Just
mean,
the current, yeah, the different standards that are available
Three
with.
tiers.
yeah, but your a tier 2 is standard 240. I mean, it's a standard house service. Like what Tom has at his house, what the charging stations are down there. Typically you have a 240, it's split off, you got 100 amps a piece.
Is that what you guys are looking to purchase, or are you looking to purchase higher, more quick?
There's no decision that's been made about that. The level 2 has been what we've mostly focused upon, which is the program or the voltage that Austin has just described.
And do you think you'd put those in a specific area where there may be 4 together? Because I'm trying to think now of the loads on the
There's also,
transformers.
yeah, there's the, and we discussed that.
We've already,
they mean, no.
yeah, that, yeah,
There would be
that's a
separate
good,
transformers, I mean, they have to be sized for that
Right.
feed. But, the difference between the level 2 and level 3s, in general, level 3s are being installed on highways and thoroughfares where speed of charging is critical. But you also need 3-phase current. So it eliminates a lot of spots. But many towns and such are actually shying away from 3-phase those because you want people to linger. I mean, so if you're providing it in a business district or that, you get the added business. And if you're parked for an hour, that
You're not
gets
gonna
you.
get- I'm sorry.
So, I mean, there's a lot of trade-offs and, the industry is still evolving as far as what the right blends are right now.
Locally, Ocean City is probably one of the only municipalities that has a 3-phase level 3 charger within their municipal.
Milford doing that as well?
I don't think Milford has one. I think they may have one proposed, but the state's project puts a lot of them at an Arby's. That's that if you can go online and the state has a commitment to put level 3s up and down the state, the 113, the 1 corridor. A lot of them, they're at Arby's locations, and then there's one in South Bethany that's at, I believe, a gas station. Don't know which one it is.
Why Arby's?
It's because the property owner applied for it.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Hotels, Arby's, and gas stations. That's where a lot of them are. But these are generic 3-phase, not like Tesla 3-phase.
Right.
Which is another problem altogether
Although
in
there's
that,
recent legislation then Tesla's agreed to, in
Right.
theory,
to open up their charging
open up their
network.
charges.
What I was speaking to, Tom, was not that part, but the fact that the quality of the charging equipment, the hardware is not, Tesla has established the gold standard for the charging stations. And there are other companies that are making product, but they're not as reliable. And what I've read, what I've learned over the last several weeks is the increased level of frustration and disappointment with owning an EV is directly driven by the fact that the charging network is not reliable. And when you are doing a road trip, it's critical, especially when you're on the road, covering many miles on a day, that you have reliable charging network that's available to you.
Aren't we just discussing how we should charge this?
I'm sorry.
Say that again.
Aren't we discussing what rates to use?
Right.
We're getting into the weeds here on the type of charging stations and so forth.
What Austin is proposing is that we use a industrial, general commercial.
Commercial. I heard that. And we're getting into the type of charging stations and cars and stuff. It's a long night. Can't we just stay on the?
Yeah.
What I would say is if the decision is made to focus in on commercial, that it would be, when you look at it, we're specifically looking at level 2 and not, when you get into level 3 or the possibility of level 3, I think you step outside the use of commercial. Then you start to get into true rate making, because the instantaneous demand on your system, that draw is a whole different ballgame.
We're not selecting the chargers, are we? I thought that was, we decided is the city's.
Right. That would be a city
purview,
function.
and we're just selling power to them.
What to do is figure out if there's going to be a rate that would apply for EV charging stations level 2.
Yeah.
Strictly, what would the BPW sell the city the electricity for?
Isn't that what you're looking for, Austin?
Yep.
And I think that's what he proposed, so.
Yeah, that's what I heard early. So we got into the weeds real quick.
And do you want, just to add in there, do you want to let Anne Marie speak?
I'm good. I just wanted to, Milford is installing the level 3s, but they're doing that with a grant through the Volkswagen settlement. So they're, but I don't think, we have not talked about level 3s at all at this point.
And that would be outside of this rate anyway.
Yeah, this is helping from the city standpoint pave a path forward for what the costs are going to be, so that they can determine how it affects them on budget and
right.
So I think we need is a motion then to implement an EV charging rate to the city, which is in commensurate with the
commercial rate,
general commercial rate.
That's a small general commercial, right?
single phase, unless you're on phase.
Right.
But
so
is there a limit of how many chargers are in one location that would affect that rate?
It doesn't affect this rate. It really affects the capital investment, which we've already started those conversations.
and installation, yeah.
Right.
All right, so do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. Okay. So last item, and so this is, it says open item, general discussion on wastewater treatment long-range plan. It's really kind of a recap of our last board workshop and the public comments. So the first thing I'll say for the public's perspective is that on Friday, we will post all of the public comments and a set of FAQs based upon those public comments for the long-term plan of the wastewater treatment plan. And I really do have to thank everybody. We got 50 sets of comments, but that really doesn't do a service. It was 50 sets of multi-page comments, and many of them were extremely well thought out, and really people spend time analyzing what had been presented both at last year's public workshop and this year's public workshop. So, and the engagement was very, very good.
I would just want to add in there, same thing for staff, because Sharon's been tackling receiving those comments, organizing those comments, coordinating them with the board. We're going to do our best to get them in by Friday. We make as much of an effort to get them done by Friday. There's a lot of effort that goes into it.
But we really thought that it was important because the comments are fairly dense, and there's a lot of repeats between people's comments, which is why we developed a set of FAQs to try to categorize them, but still put out the raw document so that everyone could see it from a transparency perspective. So having said that, I'm sorry, as Press said, it's getting late. Oh, 1 second. I lost my place. So we are going to take the public's comments and our board discussions and go back and relook at what's been developed so far, try to fill in the gaps. And we will hold another public hearing, a meeting, which we'll get to at the end about far as setting a date in March to report back to the public on where we're at. At this point, the board has made no decision whatsoever as to which options we're going to pursue. If other options come up, we will evaluate those as they come up. But at this point, we're proceeding forward. So I think that's really the high points. Austin, is there anything else you want to cover? I think the main purpose is really to set the next public workshop. So we're looking for dates in the middle to late March.
You can, this month is a little odd. It's really a short month in terms of board meetings because there's 5 Wednesdays. So I want to move the board meeting to the last Wednesday of the month and then use the Wednesday of the actual board meeting as the Wednesday for the wastewater treatment plant, or you can use the wastewater treatment plant after the next board meeting, whichever one.
So does everyone have the 29th available of March?
I do.
I can do it.
Yes.
When are you talking? An evening meeting, obviously?
Well, it's gonna be a public workshop, so I think we've typically been doing those at 6 p.m.
Right. Mhm.
To make them accessible to the public.
Was it 6?
Yeah, we did one at 6:30. We can go to 6.
Everybody's kind of gotten used to 6:30 because I think the council starts at 6:30. I know I came to a meeting at 6:30 that it started at 6, so I'm just saying.
Okay.
Is this for the workshop or the board meeting?
For the, well, whichever date we chose, I mean, should we have the board meeting first? No, let's do the workshop first. This way, or potentially take more actions on the.
Exactly.
It's budget approval, so the extra week actually does help us. So
Okay.
that's why I said the 29th may be better for the board meeting date, and the
Okay.
22nd may be better for the workshop.
All right, so the,
Let me check city calendar just real quick, make sure everything's good.
What was that? I missed it, I think.
It was a grunt.
Yeah, I have a conflict with the city, but
Those dates are fine, so.
yeah.
okay. And the last public workshop we did at the Rollins Center. And we did have a fair amount of people.
Yeah.
So I think we should probably block the Rollins Center for that.
That's the 22nd?
Yeah, wait, what date are you?
22.
Right, so the
22nd?
22nd at 6:30 will be the public workshop.
But what I'm just gonna caution you, because usually the 4th Wednesday of the month is Public Art Committee,
Right.
which is in
In the Rollins Center.
So
And I'm there.
just.
And it
So
is scheduled for that Wednesday.
How big is that session typically?
As far as number of people who attend, very small.
Because I'm saying they could take our conference room upstairs.
Or they could be here in city chambers.
What was that?
Who attends the meeting? Me.
Yeah.
Well, we want you at our meeting, just so you know.
So we're gonna shoot for the 22nd, is that it?
Yeah, at 6:30 at the Rollins Center and see,
I can confirm that tomorrow.
And we'll return with dates during that week.
and then the 29th would be our board meeting
Yes.
at 4 p.m.
So then I'm gonna add.
4 p.m. for your monthly.
I guess the other thing I do want to say, I'm sorry, my brain is starting to get a little fried also, is, we are in discussions, or we are involving the city in our discussions about the long-range plan. We have a sub-quorum that includes Andrew and Tim and Anne Marie and Earl and myself and Austin that are going to continue to discuss this. And I have talked to Andrew. We will be doing that bi-weekly going forward to make sure that the city and BPW stay coordinated on the plans going forward. So, you know, we do understand that this is an issue that affects not only the BPW ratepayers, but the City of Lewes. And while it is a BPW decision, we do value the city's input, so. The 6:30,
Okay. 6:30.
March 22nd, and 4 for the 29th.
So just throwing it out there, just in case, because typically we have the fourth Wednesday, isn't it an option to have that meeting in this room? Should Public Art have their meeting? See what I'm saying?
If we have to, yes, but it seems like if Public Art is.
Okay.
All the audience members.
Yeah. Yeah.
Aaron, do you want to vote on where we hold it?
I'd like to move the meetings to 5 PM now.
Okay. All right, having said that, call to the public. I don't know that we have any of the public on. Who's on?
Bill went to bed.
All right. Call to the press.
Very quick. The first thing, I know the letter is set to come out, but what are the benefits for someone going solar now? Are they still going to receive benefits if they have solar panels? Or is it kind of this legislation going to negate that benefit?
No, so you still have the ability. The only delta between the two is at the end, when in theory, when you build your system, you're supposed to have, in an ideal world, a perfect world, you build it to 110%. So you have that 10% cushion. The previous language basically said if you overproduced, that was returned as form as a credit at the supply service rate. The new legislation takes that piece out, but you still have every month, if you overproduce or underproduce, it basically just is flip-flop. So let's just say they overproduce one month and they have 500 kWh in credit, it goes to the next month. So if they use 1,000 in production or vice versa, it could take it off. So nothing changes other than at the end of the year, that credit.
Okay, gotcha. I think that was it. Thank you very much.
Okay.
That was short.
Yes. A lot of information.
All right. You have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you all.
Good night, gentlemen.
For the length of this, but.